On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're exploring stunning homes from around the world that celebrate the art of textiles. From vibrant prints to delicate textures, these interiors weave together stories of style, comfort, and creativity. Our journey begins in a breathtaking farmhouse nestled in Delhi, India, where treasures collected from extensive travels adorn the walls, reflecting a life filled with rich experiences. Next, we'll visit a Mediterranean-style retreat in Montecito, California, defined by its richly layered and textured interiors. From there, we'll tour a charming Stockholm home where bold fabrics and captivating wallpapers set the tone for every room. Finally, we'll step into a renter-friendly gem outside Washington, D.C., where storytelling comes alive through thoughtful design, art, and richly layered textiles. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, Homeworthy, and welcome to my family home in India. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, I'm Peter Doskoli, a New York designer, and I've lived in India with my wife and daughters for many years. So we're sitting in our home in Delhi. I always, ever since I was a young boy, have been very attracted to color, graphics, and ever since I can remember, I've been drawing and painting. And really, it was my love for art that led me to study textile design. I sort of stumbled into the fashion world just through my love of graphics and color. I studied textile design at the Fashion Institute of Technology in Manhattan, and then in the summer before my senior year, I had a job with a menswear designer, and they sent me to Delhi. So that was my first trip 40 years ago. I was 20 years old, and on that trip, of course, it was an exciting adventure. I was just struck by the art and the beauty of this ancient civilization. It was on that trip that I met some officials working for the Indian government in the Ministry of Textiles, and I later learned that textiles and handicrafts, handmade textiles, are hugely important in India because there are literally millions and tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of people who get their livelihood from artisanal fabrics. So I was invited by the government. They said, go back to New York, finish your last year at FIT, and then come and work for us. So I did that, and I ended up working for 2 years for the Indian government, which was my very first job. And I've never recovered from the shock and awe of the beauty of this amazing civilization. Here we are in what we can call the atrium of the house. It's a double height space with a skylight at the top, and you can see these panels that line the upper wall. It's printed linen that's been hand embroidered, and we designed these in our workshops here in India. I love the idea of living in a cabinet of curiosity filled with mementos, memorabilia, natural history items, of course also family pictures, lots of books, so we can see artifacts all around the house. Let's walk to the living room now. In the living room, of course, you see this very strong color on the wall. India is all about color, and I think covering the wall with so much art, it's nice to have a strong background. All of the art here, it's a little bit high-low. There's nothing very precious, and really they're mementos and memorabilia that our family has collected from all around the world. There are a lot of tiles from Turkey, from Italy, from the south of Spain, even from China and Amalfi, where my family comes from in Italy. Also on the wall, as I said, it's a mix of a variety of things. We have some artwork from the children. So my daughter painted this camel. Of course, living in India, lots of camels. There are some miniatures of Mughal engravings that are hand-colored, a gouache from the Bay of Naples, near where my family set sail for the New World of New York. So it's a very rich, here's some painted porcelain tiles from China that I found in Shanghai. Some antique French chintz fabric. Of course, with our work in textiles, we're always working with antique fabrics. The banquettes are covered in velvet. And then we have this furniture from our upholstered furniture collection that we hand make here in India. And it's printed linen, and the print, as you can see, it's inspired by the amazing Kashmiri shawls that come, the paisley shawls of the Valley of Kashmir. The Mughals loved florals and loved rendering and weaving and printing floral motifs, often very stylized. Here on this sofa, we have a paisley shawl, a Jamava shawl, and it was a gift from a friend, and it adds to this sort of maximalist mix of patterns, of colors, of just sort of surrounding ourselves with the things that we love. This coffee table I found on the 26th Street Flea Market in Manhattan. There were a number of years where this parking lot on 6th Avenue and 26th Street was filled with dealers, and there were treasures coming from China. So this table, as you can see, the drawers go on both sides. And it's this beautiful coffee table, lacquered with some nice details on the drawers. The fabric on the windows is printed linen, again from our studio. And there are some antique textiles. A very traditional treatment in decoration in India are shamyanas, or tents. So you can see this interesting fabrics tenting the ceilings. We are often inspired by traditional textiles. And in India, once again, the inspiration from Kashmiri shawls and Kashmiri hand-painted paper mache. One of the challenges, or we can say the art of being a maximalist, is knowing how to create a melange or a mix of many different textures, colors, and patterns, and still have it work. And that's the art, that's the trick. You can make mistakes and things can clash. Sometimes clashing is nice, but, and it's hard to say how to do it. It's something that maybe it's instinctual or cultivated, but everything has a harmony. It holds together as a complete look, but it really is quite a broad range of influences. Again, part of the mix of objects and patterns, we can see here a bunch of Chinese figures. When I was traveling constantly all around the world to source fabrics, I found some interesting things in China. And of course, one of the inspirations is really this centuries-old, even millennium-old tradition of the silk route and this mixing of cultures that happened all the way from Japan and China, straight through Central Asia, India being a huge part of that, and then ending in the Levant, in Aleppo and in present-day Syria, right up through Turkey to Europe. And much of our European idea of decoration comes from an amalgam of all of these influences. So we have China playing a strong part in my idea of decoration. Of course, we know the style of chinoiserie, which is a European sort of fantasy and idea of what the exotic East is. And that's part of what we enjoy recreating here in our home. Also on the table are these two glass lamps that I found in a flea market in East Hampton, out on Long Island. And the shades, these red shades, were made at Gracious Homes, which is a big decoration store on the Upper East Side. So being so far away from home, these are sort of links back to, if we do start to feel homesick, where we come from. The peacock feathers, part of the richness of the natural biodiversity in India, we have at Lal Koti wild peacocks. We hear them singing at night or as the sun rises and sets. And these feathers are feathers that we've found in the yard and collected over the years. And now if we walk over to this side of the living room, we can see, again, more tiles. These I found in an antique shop in Shanghai. There are also many sort of grand tour photographs from the late 19th and then the early 20th century of Italy, hand-colored. Here you can see, this is a fascinating object. It's a fly whisk, a traditional fly whisk we found in Calcutta last Christmas, and it's made of horsehair, and this would traditionally have been used to keep the flies away. The bar, if we get homesick, here's a painting of the Adirondack Mountains, and it's interesting in India, of course, entertaining, especially in North India. People love to party, they love to be social, and we see some social changes happening in the culture. The older generation has grown up drinking a lot of whiskey, and I guess not unlike in the US. And the younger generation now, there's the whole world of wine opening up. There are wine makers in India, and wine and beer for the younger generation is often had. Some tribal paintings, the Worli paintings of India. Every room in India needs to have air conditioning, and it's always sort of unsightly. Most of the homes don't have central heating or air conditioning, so we have what are called splits. They're units that stick on the wall, and here we've created these what are called jali patterns. They're traditional Islamic, and this is a cut wood, pierced wood screen that we've created to mask that unsightly air conditioning. Lal Koti is the name of this home, and a koti is a small house in Hindi, and Lal means red, so it's really the red house. And it's made of red sandstone, which is a very famous stone for building in North India. There's the famous Red Fort, the Jama Masjid, in the Old City. So red sandstone, but the actual architecture is very modern. It's by a member of this very large extended royal family, and he's a practicing architect in Holland. He's a Dutch architect. So the house was created in the 1980s. It was built, and it's a very interesting use of the earth. They move it around, they create depressions and hills so that the front door is on the ground level, but it's raised, and then you come down some steps and you're again on the ground level on this backside of the house. And there's a beautiful fountain in the garden that's part of the family's heritage, and the fountain comes from a palace in the Punjab. So it's a heritage piece, probably from the 19th century, and it's bubbling away in the front garden. And that again it's bringing back this rich history of the art and culture of India. So the Red House, Lal Koti, as a farmhouse here in Delhi. I think mentally life can be hard, and when our surroundings comfort us or reinforce certain values, I really believe that inanimate objects can do that. So the home we see here is really filled with objects that have meaning for us and comfort us daily. And perhaps we can proceed to the dining room, which is set for dinner. You know, I think it was Diana Vreeland who talked about hot pink being the navy blue of India. So we thought to have a pink dining room, but it's not just straight pink, it's really pink mixing with red. Here you can see these dramatic tree of life panels that we've printed at our workshop here in India. And the table laid for dinner. Dishes are interesting. They're spode, and it's a reproduction of an earlier spode pattern, which was made in the 19th century. Of course, the table linens come from Dascoli, our brand. The richness of Indian craft, the embroidery, the block printing, hand weaving is what brought us originally to India, and it animates the fabrics that we create. And here again we see on the ceiling the shamiana, that tented treatment. And so all of these patterns are inspired by traditional Indian textiles. Delhi being the capital of India, all of the embassies are here, and we end up becoming friends with many ambassadors and people who work in the embassies. So a typical dinner party could feature close Indian friends, some ambassadors, some people from the UN, maybe UNESCO, which we work with UNESCO with our textile revival work. And maybe from the kitchen, we might decide to serve either traditional Indian food with chapatis, the hot bread, with curries. Of course, when entertaining in India, you always have to know your guests, or at least ask them before they come if there are any dietary restrictions. So many people in India are vegetarians, and even there can be strict vegetarians without even garlic or onions. So it can be complicated. So what you're serving, and it can be quite diverse. We also love serving Italian food, pastas, and that's always a good solution for vegetarians as well. You can make great vegetable pastas. Having a sit-down dinner is often a challenge in Delhi because people are they're unruly. They do what they want. They come and they go. They'll come late. They'll leave. Maybe they have 2 other parties to go to in the evening. So you have to know your guests. And if you're planning a sit-down dinner, your guests need to know that it's a sit-down dinner that's timed. Also, a little bit like Spain, in North India, in Delhi, people eat very late. Also, another interesting sort of thing that happens is at a party, you'll arrive at a party, you'll have amazing snacks, that what are called snacks, but they're hot foods, oftentimes veg, non-veg, while you're drinking, and it can go on for 2 or 3 hours of people socializing, nibbling, having finger foods. And then, towards the end of the evening, the host will serve dinner. And then people eat and they say goodbye and go home, which is sort of a funny thing for me to have experienced and learned about. And dinner gets served so late that my wife and I ended up, we would eat before we would go out. So, and then I could never resist the delicious food that's served at like 11 o'clock at night. So I would end up having 2 dinners every time we would go out. But so those are some of the interesting things you learn about that are the cultural differences when you live in a different culture. When I came as a young man to work for the Indian government, it was at a moment when the government of India was projecting its culture and we can say soft power through a series of major museum exhibitions at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, at the Cooper Hewitt and the Smithsonian in Manhattan, in Washington, at the Louvre in Paris, at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and other museums also in St. Petersburg. It was called the Festival of India, and many curators and designers were enlisted to work on craft development for these exhibitions, and that's the world that I fell into. All those years ago, when I first came to India, I had the great good fortune of working with someone who was one of the major craft revivalists and people working with handmade textiles. His name was Martin Singh, and he was a prince from the royal house of Kapurthala in Punjab. And this family of whom my family and I stay in this house, Lal Koti, belongs to that family. And so there's a wonderful connection there with me personally, with someone who I consider like my guru. And this house is a farmhouse in South Delhi. And anyone who knows India knows that it can be very intense. It can be a very crowded place. The population is huge. And Delhi, I think, is a city with 27 million people in the whole metro area. So it's a very intense place to live. And living here at Lal Koti, it's like a sanctuary and a bit of countryside within the city of Delhi. So we have a wonderful garden, we have a great swimming pool, and we have a mango orchard in the back of the house. And that's how we came to be in this house, through these long-standing connections with this family. And now let's go to the TV room. All good American households have to have a TV room. And ours is a little bit special. Being here in India, of course, we love color. And here another strong yellow color on the walls. Once again, in keeping with that sort of maximalist theme, a little bit calmer here. We have a couple of nature studies, paintings of birds that a dear friend made. Some oriental decoration, these Chinese panels hanging on either side. Of course, symmetry is very important to me as a designer. The television, of course, and then this amazing tanka we found in Nepal, in Kathmandu. And it has I think 367 images of Buddha. And it's linked, I think that's the number, and the number is linked with some mystical belief in that faith. And that's pretty much it here. More family photos. The textiles on the sofa are interesting. It's once again from our studio. Hand-printed silk satin on these bolsters with a chenille velvet and a printed linen with some velvet stripe. The flowers come from the local flower market, which would be another interesting tour for us to make. It's the wholesale market. We go very early in the morning, and it's quite a scene. It's a big bustling place, and they're selling both cut flowers the way we know them for people to use in their homes, but that's really the smaller part of what the market is selling. They're also selling marigold and other lotus flowers and significant flowers that are tied to worship and the temples and offerings made to the deities. So it's always a very interesting place to visit. And as we head to the downstairs guest bedroom, we're passing through this sort of entrance area with these cabinets that are upholstered in printed cotton from our office, and this beautiful Bessarabian carpet on the floor. Bessarabians are from Eastern Europe, and it's a flat weave, so it's like a kilim weave. And they're always characterized by having large floral motifs. So we're in the downstairs guest room, and as you can see, again, some artwork on the walls. These are some original drawings from the École des Beaux-Arts, the architecture school in Paris. Another gouache of the Bay of Naples, those architectural renderings. And then we see more of those 19th century grand tour photographs, this time of Venice, hand-colored, in some very beautiful frames. And then here along this wall above the headboards are a series of watercolor illustrations that I had done after I met Cécile. And we have an interesting story. We met in India. We were both here on business trips. Cécile's family was also in textiles. And we met in Delhi. A friend introduced us. And the very next day after meeting, we went, Cécile had booked and was scheduled to go alone to Agra to visit the Taj Mahal. And I canceled my meetings for that day, and we went together. And the driver thought we were on our honeymoon because it's such a typical destination for newlyweds. And that's how sort of we had a very intense meeting, just 2 days, and then Cécile flew back to Paris. Shortly after that, she came to visit me in New York. I tried to dazzle her with the beauty of Manhattan. We went to the Rainbow Room in Rockefeller Center so that I could show her all of Manhattan over martinis. And then I went to visit her in Paris, and she brought me to a party with her friends, and everyone was coming up to me saying, you're that Indian guy. Because all they knew was that Cécile had gone to India and met some guy. So I'm that Indian guy. And then the rest is history. We embarked upon a year of what I call living dangerously. We would meet in exotic locales in Como, in Italy, in Marrakesh. And it was quite an intense year. And then we were married. And I jokingly say, Cécile married me thinking she was getting Manhattan, and she got Delhi. Because then my plans changed with work, and she agreed. She loves India. And of course, that's now old history and happily ever after and all of that. The watercolors are, it's a bit of a story. And actually, Cécile already had a daughter, Clara, and this was and she was only 4 years old. And this was actually a story to Clara, explaining how her mother and I had met. We shifted to this house in the first lockdown during COVID, and living here, it's really the peace and quiet. India is a remarkable place for nature. It's one of the richest countries in the world for biodiversity. And the birds that are at this home, we have wild peacocks that we hear in the night, in the morning at dawn. The birds are really astonishing. There's a lot of fruit trees. So even though we're in the city of Delhi, it's the nature and the peace and the quiet that we most love. It's like a little sanctuary in the city. My wife and I, despite the fact that I'm an American from New York, I've been abroad for so many years. And my family is of Italian origins, and my wife's family also is very Mediterranean. She's French, and her family also comes from Istanbul, Turkey. And being European and Mediterranean is very much a part of our identity. So living in this home, it's really the accumulation of objects over our lifetimes, and each object sort of tells a story about a place, about a moment in time. And you know, this arc of education in any individual life is something that's very important. If you're curious, if you're always learning. And for me and my life, I wasn't really born with a huge exposure to aesthetics and art, and it's something that I really had to learn over many years. So it's my studies in decorative arts, in European art, and in the arts of many diverse cultures from all over the world that informs the decoration of this house. I mean, I'm a designer, and I design textiles and products for interior decoration and fashion. So it sort of makes sense that our home would be a manifestation of those aesthetics that we love as a family and that are important to me. I think there are a few important inspirations in my life aesthetically. There are a couple of major designers. Renzo Mongiardino was an Italian set designer, costume designer, and created amazing ambiances and interiors for his clients. And then a woman in Paris named Madeleine Castin. So these were two huge influences on me aesthetically, and sort of we can see traces of their style in this house. And then, of course, one tries to develop one's own point of view. So really, it's the artifacts, and I believe that, you know, creating a home, you should have things that are familiar and meaningful to you. Even if you're working with a professional designer, I think it's important to have that communication back and forth, and a good designer is going to create an environment for you that touches you personally. Shall we go and explore upstairs? On the stairs leading to the mezzanine section, we have some artifacts here. This beloved, one of my heroes is TR, Theodore Roosevelt, and his philosophy of life and engaging, and a life of doing and action. So that's a bronze I found again out in a junk shop in East Hampton. These are some Chinese funeral stone sculptures. And then again, this idea of things that are new but are reproductions. This is the head of a Roman boy from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And then this is a very heavy marble head of Alexander the Great that we found in the Archaeological Museum in Istanbul and lugged it all the way back. Then here are 3 panels, printed raw silk, hand-woven, with some hand embroidery in, of course, a Greek theme. And in our work, we're always using antique documents. History and books are very important. So there's a small library here of reference books. Books on interiors, books on all the major textile collections in the Victoria and Albert, the Museum of Decorative Arts in Paris, and a variety of inspirations. On the floor, we have an interesting Samarkand carpet from Central Asia. And this, you can see, it looks very oriental. And the chairs are covered in a jacquard that I did many years ago when I was in New York. It's woven in Como, in Italy. So here we are in the mezzanine above that double height atrium area with the embroidered panels surrounding. And this is the master bedroom. Let's have a look. And for the master bedroom, the idea was to create like a cocoon wrapped in fabric. As you can see, the idea, which is a traditional French decorative treatment, is to take one fabric and cover all the walls, sometimes even the ceiling. Here the ceiling is not covered, but you can see we took this very complex striped fabric that we created in the studio and covered the walls. We put this little molding around at the ceiling level, just below. We printed that engineered border to follow that wood, and then beneath it we draped the fabric. So it creates a wonderfully warm feeling that you really feel like you're, I mean, it's a fairly big room, but you sort of feel like you're in a boat or in a tent with all of the fabric surrounding you. And it's a mix of Indian-inspired, but also European, with the classic florals, the very realistic floral stripe, mixing with that very small stripe, and then with this paisley print. Obviously, taste is completely up to the individual, and some people are devoted to minimalism, and I get it. I understand that aesthetic. It's pure simplicity, and you can say that it reflects your mind also, a simplicity of mind or spirit. I love the excitement of decoration, of pattern, and for me, I'd rather be in a stimulating environment with interesting shapes and forms and colors rather than a simply bare space. But I understand it, I get it, and I can get into simplicity as well. Of course, with simplicity, the bones of the space become even more important. So maybe if you have some monumental architecture or the integrity of the raw materials, whether it's stone or wood, then minimalism is possible. Here, with maximalism or with lots of things happening decoratively, it can cover a lot of shortcomings in a space. And there are many shortcomings in this home. But so those are my feelings about simplicity, minimalism, and maximalism. But in the end, I love the excitement of the association also of motifs. It's like a trigger of history for the imagination. I love history. I love reading history. And for me, the history of decorative arts, of civilization itself, of how humans have created over the thousands of years layers of culture. For me, that's interesting. And that's why I love India so much, and why my work with decorative arts and textiles keeps me enthused, because it's always a discovery. And I'm not the type of designer that's trying to create something that you look at it and you think, I've never seen that before. I love the idea of the links with history and progression and an incremental change. I guess I'm sort of conservative in that way. An interesting anecdote about this rug is I was working in Manhattan, right on Madison Square Park on 26th Street, and I left the office to go for lunch, I think, and there was a man standing on the sidewalk looking a little nervous, and he had rolled up a carpet, and I did a double take because I'm always interested in carpets, and he asked me if I wanted to buy the carpet. And I said, no, you know, someone in New York City, you don't want to really engage. And then he said, just $200. And I said, I would love to. He showed it to me. It looked very beautiful. And I said, I don't have $200. He said, there's an ATM right there. So I went and got it, and I bought it. And then years later, I brought it to be cleaned This is the carpet here in India with 3 other Afghani carpets. And the dealer who was doing the cleaning for me asked if I would sell this. And he said it's a special carpet. So I was very pleased about that. And I always wondered about that man, who he was, why he needed the money so badly. And that's the anecdote about this carpet. These stools are covered in a beautiful silk satin that's dyed red, and then it's hand embroidered. So the fineness of this embroidery is quite remarkable, and it's a nice accent to the blue bed and the canopies. So here we are in the front garden at Lal Koti. And really, this is Rani Saab's property. It's her garden. She's planted all of these amazing trees. We have fruit trees, a mango orchard in the back, which we'll see in a little bit. And this fountain from one of the palaces of the family in Punjab. And it's just a delight to be here. It's like a sanctuary in the intense city of New Delhi. So we have a great variety of trees, and we have gardeners who take care of it. As you can see, the maintenance is quite strenuous. And well, some of them are flowers, some of them are fruit trees, these exotic palm trees. For me, it's just a delight. The birds that come and sing, we have the wild peacocks, and this glorious fountain. Sometimes we entertain, we set tables on the lawn. Of course, in winter, it's an amazing place to sit in the sun. And this remarkable house. The house is made of the very traditional material of red sandstone, which in North India, many of the monuments are made, the great forts and tombs of the Mughals, certainly. Of course, the Taj Mahal is white marble, but other than that, red sandstone really is used quite a bit. And this depression, it's almost like an amphitheater, as you can see, with steps on on 3 sides: the front, which is the north, the west, and the east. So this is the front yard of Lal Koti. It's a sanctuary here. We have that front garden with the fountain, the house, a swimming pool behind this hedge, and then what's like a remarkable country road in the city of New Delhi, and a mango orchard on the other side of this hedge. Sometimes we can set a table amidst the trees and have lunch, so let's go check that out. So here we are at the mango orchard at Lal Koti. I always think it's a little bit like an enchanted garden, and in the heat of the day, to be beneath the trees, this cluster of fruit trees here, we have a table set for lunch. It's just a fantasy. You know, mangoes in India hold a very special place in the culture. I think there's something like 32 different varieties. And growing up on Long Island in New York, we don't know anything about mangoes. Here, there are the specialists, both the growers and the consumers. Some mangoes are soft and juicy and sweet, and some are firm and sour and katak. And sometimes they're cooked, a lot of times they're eaten raw. And it's fascinating. Once I was at a dinner at a friend's home in Gujarat, and they served this amazing mango puree, and it was just this light, fluffy orange delight. So here we are in the mango orchard. The table is set with one of our new table linen collections. The tablecloth, of course, this is a chinoiserie theme based on the Orient and China. The tablecloth is printed linen, a design made of pagodas and different cherry blossoms. The placemats are a traditional Chinese geometric pattern, and we have some hand embroidery. Of course, the crafts of India are super famous and quite diverse, and these are hand embroidered with these knots, creating the center of the flowers. And this napkin, all of our napkins, and in fact our cotton dresses, are made of hand-spun, hand-woven cotton. And it's remarkable. I call them like a cultural artifact, because this cotton is grown on small family farms in India, and then the plant is spun by hand and then woven by hand. So it's really like a pre-industrial agrarian ecosystem that these products come out of. And I'm always talking about the sustainability of Indian craft and how much India can offer the world regarding the fashion industry. The dishes are Wedgwood, and it's another story behind these. It's a pattern that when Napoleon was defeated by Britain and exiled to the island of St. Helena, he ate from these Wedgwood plates of this pattern. So this is called Napoleon ivy. And it's quite a sort of historic setting. And here we are in the mango orchard. What does home mean to me? You know, my parents, my grandparents left southern Italy and came to New York. It's that classic immigrant story, being processed through Ellis Island and settling in Brooklyn. My wife's family are Sephardic Jews who, of course, 500 years ago left Spain and were welcomed by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul. So we're very Mediterranean, but we're also used to, at least our genetics and our family, are used to traveling, and whether it's for economic reasons or political reasons, making a home in a place that is not necessarily your community's home or an environment that you've been in for generations. And we've taken some of that sensibility with us here, settling and living for so many years in India. Firstly, I think to do that, you have to be somewhat secure with your own identity. As an individual and standing, it takes some strength to remain who you are, but it also requires, I think, a love for humanity and for people and a curiosity to learn. So it's not very easy as a foreigner to live in India. As I said, it's such a different culture, and yet our friends that we have here, we've experienced love, friendship, life and the birth of loved ones, the death of loved ones, and this is so, it's this human experience. How do we do it? I think we're very much at home in India, and that requires a certain amount of, I think, mental flexibility, psychological maturity, and also love for people and differences. You know, when I first came to India, it was an adventure. I was excited to be here. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that some people, they come to India and they hate it. That surprised me, because the whole idea of wanting to stay where you are in the world that you know, I understand the appeal of that. But to not be curious, to not be open to things, the mystery of life outside of what you know, is something that astonishes me. And I think that's what home for me really ends up being where I am and where, of course, my loved ones are, where my family is. But I want to be open. I want to experience the unknown. I'm comforted by those things that are familiar to me, but the idea of adventure. So where is home? Home for me and for my family, I think, is wherever we happen to be. So New York will always be home. I love America. My wife, and now I'm very much European, and my wife's family is in Paris, and home for us is Paris. We have a beautiful home in Bordeaux and India. Our loved ones are here, our close friends are here. And I think really that says something about the age that we live in, with communications being so easy, that home ends up being really someplace inside. There's that amazing quote that says something about, if you would travel to the Indies to discover the wealth of the Indies, you must bring it with you. And I think that's something very important. I think home for me is something internal, it's interior, with family, but it's something that you carry with you.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Tamara.
Hi, I'm JP. Welcome to our house in Montecito, California.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi, my name is Tamara Cajuste. I am a flight attendant and a designer, and I live in Montecito, California.
And my name is Jean-Philippe Cajuste, and I also live in Montecito, California with my beautiful wife, and I am known as the Pillow Man. So we ended up at this home about almost 5 years ago, about a few months before COVID. We were prior living in Manhattan Beach, California, and we were doing a lot of business up here in Montecito. Fell in love with it, and we are so excited to be here.
We really love historical homes, and so we were just looking around, and we stumbled upon this, and it kind of really fell into our lap. The people, the owners really wanted us to move in, and we weren't quite ready because we have a kid and our daughter is in middle school, so we weren't ready to move. But it was just such an opportunity that we couldn't pass up, so we just went for it, and it's been one of the best moves ever.
To add to that we weren't really looking. We had to open up a little pop-up at the Country Mart here in Montecito, and our last week we were here, decided to go just drive around and kick some tires and sort of dream a bit. It's always been a fantasy of mine to be up here, and honestly, it did come true. So it's been an amazing experience. It's so beautiful, it's so tranquil, and the house is over 120 years old. It's basically right up our alley. So this is actually two different rooms, even though we don't have a partition, but this area is our game room. We play many, many nights with marathon of backgammon. And throughout the winter months, obviously the fireplace is going, we have martinis. COVID was actually a pretty fun time with the family.
I found them on the side of the road in Round Top, and I asked the guy if I could buy them, and they said they're just, props or whatever, but I said I gotta have them. And I found out they came from the Turkish embassy, and there's the female version and the male version of the chairs, and I just think they're so charming and delightful.
Yes, they are. And we like to layer quite a bit, as you will see. Tamara's a big fan of Suzanis, especially vintage Suzanis. So we like to layer quite a bit of the textiles over our sofas, ottomans, on walls. We do quite a bit of art collecting, especially this one here. She's a big fan of Mary McGuire out of the East Coast.
She's a dear friend of mine, and she does these beautiful, like whimsical paintings with such lovely color. They just make you so happy.
Yeah.
That particular one reminds me of the Caribbean, which I love so much because my honey's from the Caribbean and just so special.
As you'll see throughout the walls, we bought these Tree of Life fixtures. I didn't know what they were for when we first got them, but we somehow layered them throughout the house, and it adds quite a bit of a touch to it, I believe. Our aesthetic is not necessarily a look, it's very much more of a feel. And then this part of the living room is more of a family TV room. This is where we hang. We actually entertain quite a bit of friends sometimes. As you'll see, we big collectors of books. We get a lot of our inspiration from. Our sofa is, as you can see, it's pretty thick. I'm a big dude, and very lush. It's with vintage linen. The kids love it. And so we like to layer quite a bit. Even though I'm known as the pillow man, I don't put a lot of pillows on our sofa. That's one thing we don't like to do. So we like to keep it very simple.
So when we designed this room, there was just some reason. The color, the yellow and the orange colors were just calling me to it. I don't know why. The color palette really just came to me, and so I think maybe it's the citrus in Montecito, the smells of the citrus and the green. Anyway, so all the colors are picked up, a lot of oranges and a lot of yellows. That's what this room was telling me it wanted to be. Here another Mary McGuire, another Caribbean picture. And then she did a chocolate box for Louis Chéri, which is just darling with her little pictures on it. Okay, so the lampshades are made from vintage hippie fabric, vintage antique Indian block print, which I just love and collect for years and years. And again, you're picking up the oranges and the greens and the citrusy colors. Again, it's so pretty.
The bottles are actually vintage wine bottles we picked up on some of our hunts. We like to make a lot of our items like lamps and tables and chairs. We use quite a bit of different techniques, but that's one of an example of the items that we like to make. Also, you'll notice these sconces are old vintage sconces that Tamara found. Again, I don't know how she finds these things, but it's pretty amazing. When we first got them, I thought I was going to throw them away, but they landed up on my wall, and they're pretty cool. I love my French doors. I log these back. We do a lot of buying in Texas, in Round Top, Texas. I'm going to incorporate some of these doors throughout a home somewhere, but for now they're just leaning on my wall. The mirror came from Thailand. We've had it for probably 25, 30 years,
yeah.
And it's actually my little pride and joy. And the lamps, Tamara could tell you a little bit more about those lamps.
I just love them. I got them and I have to have them, and I just love them.
The bowls are a big item of ours. We do collect quite a bit of the Turkish vintage yogurt bowls, I believe.
And they're very hard to come by now, and they're just so every single one of them is one of a kind. And I just love the terracotta, and again the palette of the yellow and the green, and just the little stories that they tell on every one of them.
Yeah, you can see them throughout the home for sure. Tamara, I always say she's got an amazing eye, and I have a good talent to style. So we kind of
Definitely.
work very, very well together. I love to layer. I do that even with my own clothing. I put an old belt with some new pair, a suit or something like that. As you'll see, the rug, it's an old vintage rug that we picked up in, is it Turkey?
Texas, yeah.
Turkey?
Yeah, it's Turkish.
It's Turkish.
Yes.
But it complements, the chairs, the pillows, the bowls. It
And it ties it all
together.
Yeah.
We've been very fortunate to be able to do that. Pillowman kind of, well, I'll say this. The business was a hobby of Tamara's. She was as a flight attendant, she traveled the world. and would collect textiles. And unfortunately, I was just like, I don't need this stuff in my house. At some point, you gotta move this stuff out. And she goes, you'll see one day, and she would make pillows for us at the house. And it evolved over the last 20 years into this little mini lifestyle brand called Indian Pink. But the nickname Pillow Man was given to me because every time I went someplace, they kept saying, "Are you the Pillow Man? Are you the Pillow Man?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." So here I am.
So as you can see, I am a huge fan of the Indian poppy. A friend of mine, I bought these from a friend of mine, and they are just my pride and joy. And the other one, I'm getting it printed in India, so the other panel's gone. And I just love the fact that I love a pop of red. So we're bringing a little bit of red in our dark, cozy dining room. And so I love just here's a muted red table that is like my pride and joy. My table and my painting are my two favorite really items that I own. A painting from Argentina. And my husband always threatens me when we get in a fight or whatever. He's like, I'll sell your table or I'll sell your painting. So
yeah, but again, it goes back to mixing. Here you have vintage antique French chairs with the linen, and then you have this 200-year-old Indian painted table and as you'll turn around, you'll see we have this Argentinian painting that Tamara and one of her travels picked up.
I carried it home from Argentina. And it's really my pride and joy. Initially it was my daughter and I, and then I had another daughter, so now it's my two daughters. And I will never part with my painting. My new obsession, because I have a lot of obsession with collections, is this French, it's called Crazyville French pottery that I just adore. And a lot of people I'm just finding a lot of it. And so the collection grows. And I love the little soup bowl. Everything's just so charming. And I just love it so much.
This is a new item Tamara's been collecting over the last year. And she had gone to France and she FaceTimed me and said, what do you think about these plates? I go, well, they're really granny looking. And she said, are you kidding me? These are so beautiful. And I was like, okay, well, maybe bring some home. And here she comes with luggage of
Yes, on my layovers. I've got all my stuff and I've only got 24 hours there, and I'm coming home with like a duffel bag full of dishes, out of all things to collect on a layover.
First thing when I came in here, I was like, okay, we got to paint these walls. These are not gonna stay like this. This is granny, too old. But then I fell in love with them because it's so natural and it's such a great character to it.
And I said, no way, we're not painting these walls.
But the home is about 125 years old. I think these have been here probably well over 75 probably. And
at night with like the lighting and the candles, it's just such a special little cozy room. It really, really is.
Yeah.
The server did come with the house, which is so nice because there's a lot of, with all the collections, we need storage space. So it's really nice and it just looks like it all, was meant to be there.
Especially at night, it has this very sexy, like smoky feel to it, this area, even though with the granny plates, I call them. But there's definitely another layer that's very inviting. It feels like you're walking into an upscale restaurant in a sense. It's definitely growing on me with these plates for sure. Yeah. So these were found also in Texas. These are actually old spindles, stair spindles. And we just made lamps out of them. We just created this sort of, smoky, and then the black shades Tamara just added to the lamp.
I thought the black shade just went with this room. It was just a little more formal and kind of, just made it a little more, I don't know, I just liked it.
I mean, even though everything's not French, we have a French flag, but, the plates definitely are French, the bottles, but the painting's Argentinian, the lamps.
It's actually from Spain.
Which the Spain.
And ended up in Argentina.
And there you go, ended up Argentina. One of our little finds, nothing too spectacular, but it just adds a slight little touch. It goes well with the lamps and the painting, I think. It sort of complements each other there. We do sometimes change lampshades, maybe something a little bit more funner throughout the summer with pattern. But yeah, it kind of goes together, doesn't it?
So I've been collecting fabric like my whole life. I've just always done it. And so when I would go on my trips, I would just find the nearest vendor of any authentic, textile that they made from that country, like in China and India. And I would go to the source and just like find these amazing pieces of fabric. And then I would come home and make pillows out of them and collect them. And it just kind of just turned into a big, hobby. And then Jean-Philippe people wanted them, so he just started selling them. And it really just we went from store to store, and it just kind of it just developed on its own.
So now also it's become more than just pillows, it's furniture, but we always use vintage textiles. We don't do anything very new.
Or we reproduce vintage textiles.
We reproduce vintage textiles.
Yes, which is our new thing that we're doing. We have a wonderful man in India that reproduces antique fabric for us, and it's just amazing, the quality of the workmanship. Okay, now we're going to take you to the kitchen. I just love this little peekaboo maid's quarters door. It's so awesome. Come on in.
That's just to keep the riffraff out.
This is our kitchen. We love this little old antique kitchen. It's got great storage built-ins. And then I have another collection, my collection of plates. I love collecting plates from all over. And so this is kind of our little breakfast nook that we just eat here quite often.
Yeah.
And then we've got this old-fashioned kitchen that is not updated, but that we just absolutely love. It's just, everybody's always in here cooking. Jean-Philippe is a big cook. And so we're making food.
Yeah.
Lots of fun breakfast. Sunday mornings, we always have BLTs.
The botanicals you're seeing up top of the cabinetry here just adds another layer to the cabinets, I believe, and it draws your eye upwards. And with the gold frames, again, we're trying to just give it some sort of a style with the gold knobs, the brass, faucet. But again, it's nothing that we're trying to be so ostentatious about it, but more of just a clean feel. But yeah, there's some really fun dinners that come out of this kitchen for sure.
Right, it's a very functional kitchen. We do a lot of cooking in here. The rug I got at an antique store or at a thrift store, and I just fell in love with it. Just again, I'm always searching wherever I go. Every layover, I go and find an antique mall, find a vendor, find an antique area, and just bring home, just collect. It's just because you never know when you're going to find something good.
Yeah, the one word I do always use almost too much, it's called being unpredictable. We don't know reason why, it just somehow ends up looking good at that space. I mean, even the tablecloths, when you see them in a place, you'll never think of where am I going to put that? And then you put it in your kitchen and it works. And it sort of marries everything together.
The painting we found at the Long Beach flea market, I think. Mm-hmm. And then the tablecloths I collect as much as I possibly can. The vintage, I call it hippie cloth, but it's all vintage block print, and they're just absolutely
from the
stunning.
60s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, from the 60s and 70s.
The home itself, first of all, it's a historical home, and it has such a beautiful bone type structure. I feel like it's like an understated piece of gem.
The most beautiful thing about Montecito is it's like on the trees, it's gardens on the water. So it's very enlightening, and the way that the town sits, the whole Santa Barbara is north-south. So it's very, like, when the clouds come in, it's very misty all the time. So it's like it's very dreamy here, and so green, and then you have the ocean. It's just magical.
The only way could compare it to is very Mediterranean. As Tamara mentioned, it's east, it goes south and north. So when the sun rises, especially in the summertime, it almost rises in the ocean in the morning and sets in the ocean at night. So it's a very surreal, beautiful Mediterranean feel. That's the only way I could describe it. Welcome to
It's our backyard.
our little backyard. Actually, this is a more of an alfresco dining area that we love to entertain. It's an old vintage French wine tasting table from the early 1900s. I'm a big fan of old, long, skinny tables. I'm a big collector. That's my collection. I've been collecting those quite a bit now. The chairs are just your basic IKEA, outdoor.
Little French fold-up chairs. They're fabulous.
They work well with the table. These are old vintage urns that we found on some of our trips. But we do put candles in there at night. Our sort of dinners are filled with laughter and with music. We have a lot of artist friends, painters, musicians, actors, and so it can be quite lovely out here with these dinners. Sometimes they end up in a little
refreshing place.
Yeah, for sure.
Really is. Our kids are big volleyball players, so we used to have a volleyball court out here.
Yeah.
And now we just kind of changed it to now we sit out there during sunset. It's really pretty with the chairs. It's just really there's so many different locations in this home where you can just set little, areas, which is so nice. And it's all about the way the sun hits.
One thing, as you noticed, so you hear the birds. It's extremely quiet. There's an old church that's not too far away, and it always tells you what time it is as the bells ring.
So you hear the church bells, and you hear the train, which is really it's very nostalgic, Montecito. People, when they come up here, they're like, oh, it's so relaxing. So it's really a refreshing place to come.
And the beach is down the street. It's not that far.
So here we have this little courtyard that I like to have little fresh plants. We sit out here, have coffee in the morning. The wisteria during April, the wisteria blooms here, and it's just magical. I'm sorry it's not there right now. Anyway, it's just a really charming little courtyard. I just love it. When we have a dinner party, it's like,
usually this is a bar area that we put our bar, an outdoor bar, and then we have quite a bit of people over, and then we just go right into the dining room and have dinner or late lunch.
Now we're going to take you into our studio / dressing room. It's kind of I have a thing with red, but I don't like too much red in the house, so I just love red pillows. They just do something for me. And I have my whole collection of fabrics over here. These are antique Suzani fabric that just is my obsession right now, and they're over 100 years old, very difficult to find. The tradition of the stitching is not, it's becoming extinct because the new generations are not doing it anymore. So, and then I just got this in Doha. It's Iranian kalamakari. I just got this last week in Doha, and it's just amazing. All of this fabric here, this is called Nankin, and it comes from China. And they're old. This has actually been dyed a bit, but they're old mattresses from back in the day. And I mean, the amount of beautiful pillows we've made from this textile is amazing. So we make primarily pillows, but then also other items out of all of these textiles. This is Kantha cloth. It is it's like stitched. These are old saris, and they never throw anything away. So they just stitch and stitch and stitch, and they become these beautiful blankets with the colors and the softness, and they're just magical pieces of fabric. Of course, we have the Indian block print that I love, and anything pink, little block print fabrics I just love so much.
One thing I would like to show you as well is that we're doing in the process is we are, as Tamara mentioned, we're reproducing old vintage lines. So for example, you tell her about that.
So this is an old piece of fabric that I had, and we sent it to my guy in India, and he reproduced it on linen, which is just lovely. And now we're reupholstering in this.
So it's just basically, these are all vintage archives prints, and we're reproducing it on for outdoor lines, as well as for upholstery, curtains, pillows, and this is a couple of the samples. But hopefully by the end of the year, we're going to have a new line for the next show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's old textiles that she finds, and we figure out what, if we can make a pillow out of it, or should we just not
reproduce it. Or here's some more of the Indian, like the hippie fabric that is another from the 60s and 70s that people used to put all over their walls, and it's just so beautifully made, and you can't find it anymore. So I want to reproduce it, and it's almost like on a gauzy piece of fabric. They're old tablecloths, and you can cover the walls with them. You can cover a sofa with it, and just layer and drape them. It's so much fun.
Anybody who was from the 60s can relate, that's for sure, because these are they all come from the 60s.
60s and the 70s.
I'm an obsessive about making lampshades from this fabric.
Yeah. And then this piece back here that's on the back wall is a beautiful piece that I found in Brimfield. This man had it in this suitcase, and I pulled it out of this old suitcase, this one and the one in my bedroom, and it's just the workmanship on this piece of fabric it's all block print, and it's just magical. One thing I do want to mention, this is my friend Pedro de la Cruz, beautiful artist, Santa Barbara artist. I just love this is my daughter and her little dog, and I just love the little simplicity of this painting.
Another artist that we are friends of ours, a very well-known Santa Barbara artist, Colette Constantino. This is actually a print that she actually made for Schumacher.
For wallpaper.
This is actually a print, but we just love the colors with the walls.
She's so talented, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. This is one of my bowls that I like the ones that are up on the wall from Turkey with all the one-of-a-kind different. And this is just a larger one. Inside, I have another collection I love antique tarot cards. I mean, I would love to make wallpaper out of this. I mean, they're just unbelievable. All the patterns and the color palette and everything. I just love them. So I'm just trying to find out what I'm going to do with them. So I just leave them in this bowl until we'll figure it out.
The table is Indian.
Rose Bowl. We got it at the Rose Bowl years ago. And again, it's just that one little pop of red that just makes me so happy.
Yeah. The pillows is a mixture of different textiles. The gingham is actually from hand spun from the Hill tribe in China, and this is an old Nanking vintage textile, very very rare to find with the vegetable dye. One thing that I'd like to share is that we like to have stuff look older, and by that meaning more muted. So we flip the textiles inside out.
We like everything, we turn a lot around, so it's not so bright. It's kind of like a soft red.
Yeah, it's like a faded.
It looks more worn and more, lived in.
So again, a mixture of, there's French ticking.
There's French, there's old hippie again.
Again, yep. And
then the famous poppy that we love.
Yes.
In the afternoon, the sun comes in here and these windows open, and it's just such a little refreshing room.
Okay, so this is our youngest daughter, Gabby's room. And as you can see, she's got the boho chic vibe going. She got a little bit of mom's bug with the textiles. She loves color. And she's on her bed. You'll see that she's got some of her mom's favorite vintage Suzanis, layered with a Campa blanket, vintage Suzani on the wall.
She loves her monograms.
She's a big monogram girl on her pillows. Yeah, it's a fun room. A lot of light. It's wraparound windows, and she definitely loves to have a little bit of sleepovers with her friends over here. It's simple. It's a simple room.
It's a very happy room, though. The light in here is just lovely. It's really fun.
So this is, for example, this is a bedding line that we created last year. Again, a reproduction of some old textiles that Tamara made. So we did that.
And then we faded it to make it give it a little pink tint. And just, again, the yellow in here, because it's such a happy room. So, I think it calls for that. The bed is she picked this bed out in Round Top, and it was blue. And so we painted it, and it's just a little spindle bed. It's really fun. The majority of this stuff is found. I mean, these are found during COVID, the old English dressers, and then the little side tables, and then just mixed with the armoire I wouldn't necessarily have in here, but for a teenager, she needs to put all of her stuff. She's got so much stuff so that it doesn't get overwhelming.
We rarely actually get anything that's new.
Yes.
We're big into finding treasures.
Right.
But sometimes if you need some room, you got to find a dresser or an armoire. You got to go for it. And so, but ideally, we would put something probably a little bit older than that.
So this is our primary bedroom. Again, just kind of layered and thrown together. This is my favorite piece that I found in Brimfield. I just got it from a man that had it in an old suitcase, and it's another tree of life. It's just a beautiful piece of textile that I love on the wall. The sconces I found, I love anything shells. Shells make me happy, shells and birds. And I found those in Round Top. The antique French mirrors are always a plus. The Louis Philippe.
And then again, we don't hang things very much, but we like to just lean like a mirror on a dresser. The old vintage dresser from our farm in Texas. Tamara collects a lot of wicker lamps and chairs.
I love vintage wicker.
So that's her big thing, as you can see, like a towel holder. And then our bathroom, our tiny little bathroom is actually, it's small, but it's functional. And we have this beautiful wallpaper that she found. She actually hung it herself, unbelievable. And vintage rug, an old vintage Louis Philippe mirror. But if you could see, like, there's a lot of quaintness.
I love the old little sink.
Yeah.
I love just the charmingness of this little tiny bathroom. It's very special. And then I have one of my favorite little Mary Maguires over the toilet. It's always a fun thing to have.
It's an old custom bed that was handed to us by some friends of ours. It came from a pretty special place, and it's extremely
beautiful.
Comfortable.
Yes, we love our
and
bed.
It's never going to part with us for sure.
And then over here, I have some art. I went to art school in France, so I did a lot of drawings, and so I love the nudes, of course, because it was a lot of that. And then just birds again that I collected from different flea markets. There we are with the family, and there's Jean-Philippe and I when we got married many years ago.
The curtains and the pillows are Fortune textiles. Very, very expensive textiles. It's I don't know how we end up getting them, because
A friend of mine gave them to me.
So here we are. Friends of ours give us a lot of stuff.
The closet's really fun. It's kind of like a colorful experience.
You got to get tight shots in there.
This again is a piece of fabric that I found from England, and I had it reproduced and then just made on this super soft cotton. And it's a little prairie dress. It looks really cute in the summer. And then here's another one that I made from an antique piece of fabric, of paisley fabric. Again, just a really simple little summer dress that, and then in Texas you can wear it with like boots, a little hat, like you put it on and you're good to go. And then I made some winter ones that were very popular with the turtlenecks. Again, another piece of fabric that I found and just had it reproduced and made the dresses on with it. So it's just kind of fun. I just kind of go with my intuition with the fabrics that collect a lot of vintage. This is like heavy something from some Arabic country. I don't know, it's just a beautiful textile. The vintage clothing is kind of a big thing. I have a bunch of the patchwork, my patchwork dresses that I love. They're like work of art.
This is our guest cottage, actually my man
JP's
cave.
like man cave.
But we also, our son is living at home now with us, so he's staying here. And this is a little bit more masculine. So not a lot of pink in here, as we'll see. I'm very influenced by Ralph Lauren. And so since I've been into design and clothing, I've been getting inspired quite a bit. But everything, again, is vintage. Like the African vintage textile. We found an old wing back, and I thought it would be kind of cool just to put some really good fun indigo on it. An old restoration hardware sofa that we upholstered in vintage linen fabric, but that we also had dyed in a fun brown chocolate color. As you will see in California, we use a lot of sisal. We sisal a lot of our rooms, but sisal is a big thing out here. It's great for the sun and water and sand.
It gives that natural tone.
Yeah.
It's really natural vibe.
The pillows, as I was saying to you, Pillow Man, influenced by Ralph Lauren. Both vintage African textiles that we patched some Japanese boro. Do quite a bit of that. The sofa also vintage linen that we upholstered with this. One of my first gifts that Tamara gave me 30 years ago?
Probably.
35 years ago, maybe, as an anniversary gift. I love American Indian art as well. So this is an old restoration chair that we found in a dealer, and
in Round Top.
in Round Top, yeah.
And then this is all reupholstered in vintage linen that we have
Yeah.
dyed. So I love the hodgepodge of that. It's so fun.
So back when I was a lot younger, I was doing some modeling, and these are some old photos of I took for a magazine. These are our children, our son
Jack
Max, our youngest Gabby, and then our oldest Phoebe, and famous photographer Jack Guy did a lot of the photography for us. My son's a big skater, and you can see he's got a lot of skate photos in here as well. I love using rugs and textiles on the walls. It just adds so much. I mean, because they're pieces of art, and not just for the floor. You can literally hang these. This is a Turkish rug as well.
A home means to me a place where I can be myself and be free and do my art and be with my family, of course. And that's exactly what we do here.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Kathy, and welcome to my home in Stockholm. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Kathy Nordström, and I'm a textile designer living in Stockholm, Sweden, with my 3 kids and my husband and my little black and white dog, Dixie. So we live in a house outside Stockholm. It's a very leafy suburb called Lidingö. It's about 15 minutes outside central Stockholm. And the house that we live in is between classic functionalism. So it was built in 1925. So we moved here 8 years ago, and we were actually living in another house in Lidingö with our children. I think Faye, my youngest, was about 2-3 years old. And we'd been looking for houses for a while online, not finding anything. And then I saw the listing for this house, and I remember like shouting to my husband, I was like, I found the house. I have to go to this viewing of the house, but this is it. I could like tell from the pictures online. So I came, and the minute I walked inside the door, I knew that this was home. I'm a very gut kind of oriented person. So I instantly knew that this was the place I wanted to call my home. This is the hallway, and this is actually an extension. The house was built in 1925, and I think they added this extension in 1930s or even 1950. There are 2 extensions to the house. So this is like 3 steps down from the other house. So it's a bit dark. And when we moved here, it was like just a white box, and it was horrible. So I just wanted to make it even like super cozy and kind of add to that darkness that, is inevitable here. So we put up a grass cloth wallpaper from Designers Guild. And I know, every person who was born in the 1940s and 50s and grew up in the 60s and 70s hates grass cloth. I don't. I love it. And I actually have it in 2 rooms in the house now. And we just put in this kind of stone traditional Swedish flooring, and there are just lots of things in this room that I love. The one thing that I cherish the most is probably the chair that I inherited from my grandmother Florence. And it was my aunt who actually asked me maybe 10 years ago if I wanted this chair when my grandmother passed away. And it was covered in this fabric which I loved, which was this kind of leopard floral mix. And I love that my grandmother chose this, because I would have chosen the same kind of fabric. So this was actually one of the first fabrics that I designed for my own collection. So it was inspired by the original fabric that my grandmother Florence chose. So hence the name, Florence. And basically it's like lots of textiles. We have this traditional Swedish röllakan rug, a flat weave, by Berit König in these kind of blue-purple hues. And it's one of my favorite pieces in the house. And I hate it when my husband and boys leave their wintry shoes on it. And my husband's like, well, how can you have a rug that, we can't put our shoes on? And I'm like, that's what that rug is for. This rug is pretty. This ceramic lamp is a vintage one from Italy. I have a thing for vintage lamp bases. I don't like newly produced ones. So I try to source vintage lamps and just have them rewired at the electrician. So it's a fairly easy thing to do. So this is a vintage Italian from I think the 1960s. It's a bit kitsch, but I love it. So this room we call the grotto, grottan in Swedish, because it really is like a dungeon. It's north facing and constantly dark, and instead of trying to light it up by painting the white white red anything, I just did the opposite. So we have these teal blue walls, and I painted the ceiling the same color. This serves as a guest room, but we never have guests staying over. Occasionally my little brother and his family, but mostly it's the grotto for our children to play PlayStation. So this is where they hang out with their friends. And we have this big bed. We used to have like a kind of strict ottoman or sofa, which was super uncomfy. It looked good, but it was so uncomfortable. So we decided to put in a bed here, and sometimes they have friends staying over and they spend the night here, the kids. But basically it's the PlayStation room. And we have the Roman blinds is the fabric from Schumacher. And I saw Matilda Goad has this beautiful red bookshelf in her home. So I was super inspired a couple of years ago. So we decided to paint this small kind of storage unit bright red. And I never want to paint it another color. I think I might change my mind, but I love it. It's so great together with this teal blue. And basically we just have this big, super comfortable armchair in my fabric. This is where the kids hang out. I rarely spend any time in here, except when I store my stuff. We also have this painting, which I love. You either love it or you hate it, but it's called Mother, and it's by this artist called Emma Jelk, and it looks like a photography from afar, but it's actually painted. It's an oil painting, or acrylic maybe. But I said before that I like art to be a conversation starter and slightly provocative, and this truly is. People do not like the fact that she has stretch marks on her breasts and stomach. Like my kids are slightly disgusted by it, but I love, love, love this piece. This is Motherhood, and I think it's just so beautifully painted, and I love this dark kind of white background. It pops. So that's actually one of my favorite pieces in the house. I love color. I love color in when it comes to clothes. I love color when it comes to my own designs and my fabrics. I feel like I'm going to a funeral when I'm dressed in black. So I think it's just very much me. And when it came to, I remember as a kid when I came home to the families of my friends, you know, where the parents actually put some time and effort into the home decor, where you could see that somebody cared. I loved being in those homes. I lived in the UK when I was a kid, small. I moved to Sweden when I was 6 years old. But I've always loved those kind of cozy interiors where you feel like you're embraced, you know. I have a very hard time for, you know, white walls, concrete floors, no curtains. There's certain architecture that really needs that kind of decoration, but I myself thrive on layers and layers and layers of textiles, books. I love books. There's like books everywhere, magazines. So I didn't really have a common thread when it came to color. I usually start with a fabric or a painting, and I work from that. So for instance, I love the Schumacher fabric that we have for the Roman blinds here. So the wall color and the bookshelf, everything kind of works together with this red, teal, orange, mustard fabric, ECAT fabric. But I also changed my mind a lot. I also repaint a lot. So that it evolves, you know, it depends on what kind of mood or state I'm in. But basically the more color, the better. So once we decided that we were going to make this kind of a guest room, I cannot have a bed without a headboard. It's just not going to happen in this house. So naturally I chose my own fabric. I don't only have my own fabric in the house. That would be horrible. That would be living in a showroom. But this is one of our stripes. It's called Annalisa, and it's actually a horizontal stripe. It runs like this on the roll, but when you use it for smaller pieces, you can just, you know, use it however you want to. So I wanted to have it as a vertical stripe here. And basically, even though my kids hang out here all the time, I still wanted to feel, you know, comfy and luxurious and thought through. I would never, you know, toss in just IKEA because the kids are here. I think that's like a thread throughout the whole house. Nothing is too precious. So this is a very expensive bed for teenage kids to hang out in. This bedspread is from a brand called Once Milano, which I sell these bedspreads in my shop in Stockholm. But I hunted it down. I saw it in a house and garden a couple years ago. So I bought one for myself many, many years ago. And since I started my own business, I reached out. So I become wholesale for Once Milano in Sweden. But these are honestly like the Rolls Royce of bedspreads. They're expensive, but you'll never look back. They're the best ones ever. So yeah, let's move on to the rest of the house. So this is the guest loo in the hallway, and it's wallpapered in my wallpaper called Blanche, which is this really kind of dark, moody oak leaf wallpaper. It is what it is. It's a tiny little guest loo, but I wanted to add layers here too. So we have some art, we have this rattan mirror, we have this little curtain in a Beata Heumann fabric. And basically it's just super tiny, but I just wanted to add and make it feel less sterile. So hence the fabric and the wallpaper. And a little bit of potpourri, which smells amazing. I received that as a gift from a house guest. And she said you should always gift the host something that they cannot find in their own country. So she had purchased this in, I think, Florence in Italy, from this small family-owned business who makes these amazing potpourris. I've never owned potpourri, I've never had it in my life, but it smells divine, so it's perfect to have in the guest slip. I would say the style of our home has changed a lot over the 8 years that we've been in this house. So when we moved in, I had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and I was exhausted. So all these kind of small decisions were a bit overwhelming. So when we moved into the house and we had the painters and everything, every wall was white. Like I was just painting everything white. Today we only have white, but it's like a soft beige white in this room and the kitchen. There are no other white walls in the house. So style-wise, the house has evolved a lot. It was in really good condition when we moved in. The previous owners had taken really good care of the house. Style-wise, I think it's evolved along my business. I started my own business 4 years ago, like in the textile business. So I'm a textile designer and I love pattern and I love color. And I always I've never finished with my home. I think now I'm in a good place. So I don't feel like I need to redo anything in the near future, but there's always like new furniture coming in, replaced. I'm a vivid, online auction hunter. So I kind of fine-tune the house every year. And I just think that's a really fun part of living in a home, that you can actually, it changes, like life changes and the kids grow older and maybe their needs change and you want more privacy or the other way around. So a house is in movement, I think, and nothing is very static. So the one thing I would say is that I've become more confident in how I use fabric and color and pattern as opposed to 8 years ago when I maybe wasn't as confident. But yeah, it's constantly changing, but I think that's a really fun thing. Okay, so we are now in our combined living room and dining room area, and it's an L-shaped room, which has proved to be very, very tricky furnishing. It's driven me nuts, to be honest, a couple of times. Small problems, but still. So we use this formal dining area for everything. We do homework here, and we have dinners with friends, obviously, but it's not just a dining room. It's really a place which we use. I don't like having rooms that you don't use. We don't live that big, so we use every inch of this house, but still. The focal points in this house is obviously the painting, which was our first real art that proper art that we bought, and it's by a Swedish artist called Peter Fri. And we saw this in a gallery in southern Sweden where we have our summer house. And me and my husband Eric were standing in front of this painting, just really, it sucks you in. And I love he does these kind of landscape paintings, and he always has this white board in the bottom or as a frame. And then basically a lot of furniture in our house is vintage that I've had reupholstered and fixed, but the dining table is custom made for us. And it came about, the guys who did our kitchen, which you will see in a bit, when they were renovating the kitchen, Philip told me that he has this kind of side business with two friends where they make furniture. So we started talking and I was like, okay, but I need a dining table. Is that something you can make for me? And they have their aesthetic. So I just sent him some things that I like. And then I said, just do your thing. So it weighs literally a ton, this table. But what I love mostly about it is this kind of shape here on the edge, this rounded shape, and the legs, which are all individually shaped. So no leg is the other one, identical to the other leg. And he said, I remember Philip said that it was very liberating working that way because it didn't have a mold or anything that he had to stay true to. He could just shape them the way he wanted it to be shaped. And the color, this kind of teal, green, blue color, actually comes from my ceramic collection, which I will show you in a while, from a Swedish ceramic factory called Uppsala Ekeby. So this table we love. It's not the most practical because the legs are very chunky and it's asymmetrical. So when you're setting a table for 8 people, it's not the best, but I don't care. I love it. It's so beautiful. So this is the ceramic collection I was talking about. All the green stuff is from Uppsala Ekeby. And they were very prominent in like the 1920s, 30s, 40s. And they're just, they're all slightly individual depending on who made them. My favorite one is called Anna-Lisa Thompson. I actually have a fabric named after her, but they're just divine. And I started collecting them 15 years ago. Unfortunately, they've become quite pricey, so I can't, make those bargains anymore. But I love this collection. I keep adding bit by bit. But this green color is some kind of dominant figure in my home. Other than that, there's a bunch of other ceramics, just stuff I like. I think a bookshelf is a very true testament of who lives in that house. I do not like styled bookshelves. That's probably my least favorite thing in a house because it just says nothing about who lives there. Probably a decorator who did it, or you just I don't know. I love books, like I said before. So it's a wide variety of books. This is my favorite book for anyone who wants to know. It's called Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It is honestly one of the best books I've read of my life. And my husband just finished it and he was equally amazed and happy to have read it. So read this book. The rug that we have in our dining room is from the same brand that did the rug for the living room. It's called Vandra Rugs. It's a Swedish brand run by 3 women, and they have all their production in Ukraine. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, it really posed, a really huge problem for them. They had to move their whole factory from one side of Ukraine to the other in order to maintain safety and the livelihood for all the women who do their weaving, which they successfully did, so it's quite impressive. It's a flat weave, but we have these small details which make them interesting. For instance, there's gold thread in this one and that one. We can see it here, so it's gold thread running vertically, so it looks like a stripe. Otherwise, it's just the great quality rugs that last for a lifetime. And this is probably the most gray thing I have in the house. I don't like gray, but it's gray bluish, which is okay. So when it comes to art, I don't want to be too precious about it. I just adding. We just put this one up on top of the other one last week. This is a Lido by Lennart Rode, Swedish artist, which I bought for nothing on the equivalent of Craigslist. And had it reframed. And this one is drawn. It's my great grandfather drew this, and I found a bunch of his old paintings in my parents' house a couple of weeks ago, and I had them reframed. And so both of my brothers got a few, and I kept a few for myself. And they're just very, very precious to me. He was in the Navy, and he worked for the late Swedish king. But he was also an artist, and he wrote books, and he drew in all the photo albums for my mom when she was a kid. So he was very, very, very creative, and that runs in the family. So that's very dear to me, that painting. So now we're standing in the living room, which is adjacent to the dining area. And there's a lot happening here, just because I like collecting things. But the sofa is probably the piece of furniture where I spend the most time. I read, I love being in this, this area of the house because I can see everyone. I can look straight into the kitchen, I can see the TV room where my kids spend a lot of the time. And it's just a nice spot to look at all the things that I love. And the sofa is actually also a Craigslist find that we had reupholstered in this dark chocolate velvet, and the legs were ugly, so we did this little skirt in order to hide the ugly legs. But it's like a quality sofa, so that's what I do when I look for vintage or secondhand pieces of furniture. I know what brands I'm looking for, the ones that will stand the test of time, and I go online searching for them. So this is an old Danish sofa, Danish brand. And there's a mix of cushions in it. Some are mine, and these two floral ones, which I love, are from the apartment in Copenhagen. Other than that, we have this rug, which was also kind of custom designed to work with this space. It also goes in this kind of teal blue color, which, thinking of it, probably is the color that is used the most in this house, together with reds and greens. We have a dining table from Svensk 10 and this very modern Danish table in gold from Hay, which is also like a Craigslist find. But I like the clash between the more classic design and the modern kind of goldy metallic feel. These armchairs are a Swedish designer called Bruno Mattsson, and they are the most comfortable chairs in the world. I also think it's really important to have tables everywhere. Like, I want you to be able to put down your cup of tea or your cocktail. So I have coasters in hand. So you don't put your cocktail on this side table from Svensk 10, which I love. Other than that, it's just like a bunch of books, ceramics, small things. Almost all of the lampshades are from my own brand, covered in fabric from us. I have a few neutral lampshades, but not much. And these ceramics, which I know, these vases also from Uppsala Ekeby, although they're not green. The candlelight holders are. But these are from the woman I talked about, Anna-Lisa Thompson. And I just love them. I cannot leave this room without talking about the painting, which is probably one of the favorite pieces in my house. It's by a Swedish artist called Isak Hall. I think we only have Swedish artists actually in the house, which I think is pretty cool. And I just wanted to show you this piece before we move into the kitchen. This is an old, like Gustaviansk chest of drawers, traditional kind of Swedish piece of furniture, and it was grey. And I don't like grey, as I said before. So I had commissioned an artist called Holly Björklund. She's a British girl, but she lives in Stockholm, to paint it. And she kind of ended up in this kind of bluish, blue-gray that I have on the rugs. And I love it so much. It just kind of elevated the whole room. It's a unique piece of furniture that nobody else has. I love that kind of stuff. I don't like going to a store and buying something that someone else can buy. So that's a treasured piece, as is this cupboard, which is called the Kit Kat cupboard because it looks like a Kit Kat. So it's the same guys, Diaform, who made the dining room table, the side tables, the green side tables that we have, the console table in the living room. Basically, their collection evolved together with me when I needed things for the house, and they designed them to fit within their aesthetics. But I got a bunch of unique pieces of furniture that I would never have been able to afford. So that was just, the timing was perfect. I'm a self-taught textile designer. I haven't studied it in college or university. So I was a graphic designer by, I have an education in graphic design. And I did that for a few years, and I freelanced as a graphic designer. And as much as I love and appreciate graphic design, especially typography, I never felt that it was like my calling. I knew that I wasn't, the best in the class. But I kind of did it anyway. When my youngest was born, I stumbled across this online pattern design course. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but it literally was a light bulb moment. Like, I knew there and then that this is what I wanted to do. So whenever she slept and the boys were at kindergarten and she had her naps, I kind of took this online course, which was great. And I did that for a couple of years, licensing my fabrics. But I did feel this massive disconnection to my work. And I was talking to a friend on the phone, because I've always loved interior design, but I'm not an interior designer. I've always loved textiles. And I was like, I really want to do my own textile line. Because in Sweden Sweden is famous for the Scandi minimalism, and I'm not really sure why. I think that kind of came in the 90s, because we have a history of very rich, patterned interiors and ornamented interiors and you know, painted walls and ceilings, and it's beautiful if you travel across Sweden and all these old castles and mansions. So I don't know where the minimalism really came in and why that stuck, but it really has stuck. So a lot of Swedish homes are beige. So I kind of saw you know, a hole in the market where I could actually design patterns that I wanted in my home myself. And I was talking about this with my friend, and I was like, maybe I do this in a couple of years. And she said, well, why don't you just do it now? And one of the things that I knew that I really, really wanted was I wanted to be produced in Sweden, because we have a great heritage of like textile design and textile production. So that's kind of how it came about 4 years ago. And since then, it's just been spiraling. So we're moving into the kitchen. It's getting dark, it's Sweden, so you have to bear with us. We had a designer, she's Australian, but she lives in Stockholm. Her name is Rebecca Moore, and I found her on Instagram because I wanted someone to come in with a non-Swedish eye. Like I wanted the kitchen to feel like you can't put a label on it when it was designed. It could have been in the 90s or the early 2000s or whatever, but I did not want anything that screamed 2010 or 2020. And so she designed this kitchen together with me, and it just turned out to be, this is the room where we spend most time as a family. And I wanted to have a seating area that was comfortable, and I wanted to bring in fabric in this otherwise kind of sterile environment as a kitchen can become. So we upholstered the kitchen banquette in my fabric. It's called Faye, the name of my daughter. And all our fabrics are hand printed in northern Sweden, like in the same way they have been since 1946. So it's just this beautiful upholstery, colorful, fun, vintage 50s inspired print. And it's deep, so it's very comfortable. I kind of wait until the day when I come down in the kitchen and I find one of my kids' friends sleeping here. But yeah, we spend a lot of time here. The table is an antique Swedish table, typical for Sweden, called bockbord, which I found at an online auction house for nothing. The chairs are new, one of the few modern pieces in the house, but I felt that we needed something modern to contrast the table. The inside of the cupboards is painted in this kind of rusty, warm red, similar to the cupboard I just showed you, and it just adds to this warmth that I think this kitchen really eludes. And the blinds are Schumacher fabric too, and one of my favorite prints from them, I think it's called Pomegranate or something. And I think it's really nice getting fabric into a kitchen. It adds something. It's maybe not the most practical, but I don't know why everything has to be so practical all the time. But otherwise it's just full of storage. And then we have this space. We make our morning coffee, you know, I make my tea, we toast bread. But it's just a kitchen that we use like a lot and that we love. And it's a part of the whole living room area. So I wanted it to be pretty, and I wanted it to have a lot of fabric and, you know, these kind of plates on the wall, which are, most of them are like vintage Hungarian stuff that I found on Etsy. I spend a lot of time on Etsy. And also these, I think it's from Northern Africa, Malaika Linen is the company that makes or sells these. I think it's Fayum Pottery is the name of the factory. This is from First Dibs. And it was this really boring shade, which I just did not like at all. So I had a friend who's really creative. She made this little skirt, which we just put on top of it. And it made all the difference. This is our TV room, and we spend, like, apart from the kitchen, I keep saying that we spend most of the time in this room, but I think maybe this is the room where we spend most of the time. It's really small. It used to have an opening to the basement, so you could like go from this room straight into the kitchen, but we closed that off and made it even more kind of secluded. And this also faces north, like the dungeon I showed you initially. So we did the same thing. Like we kept it really dark, cozy, grass cloth on the walls, this kind of blue ceiling, and a like comfortable sofa, wall to wall, bunch of cushions, and like just super, super, super cozy. The cushions are a mix of my own and vintage ones. And this ottoman is a collaboration that I did with a Swedish brand called Dusty Deco. So we did 2 ottomans fully upholstered in fabric, which is something you cannot find in Sweden. I know you can find a bunch of them in the UK and the US. So they approached me and asked me if I had something special I wanted to do. And I was like, yes, I want to make an ottoman that is fully upholstered, legs and everything. Not sterile, not minimalistic, nothing like that. So we have this one, and then I have a bigger one that is square. But basically it's just super cozy. Once again, fabric from Schumacher, but I love this fabric because it's embroidered. So it's like really unpractical, like most things in my home, but beautiful. And we have games and family photos. The traditional Swedish dalahäst. So I collect these. I think they're so pretty. You can find them everywhere in Sweden. Every flea market you go to. And all these kind of small like memory things that we've bought, you know, travel. I love this angry guy from the movie Inside Out. He's my favorite character in that movie. Maybe because I'm also a bit angry sometimes. But yeah, it's all these kind of just small things that make a home. So we're standing by the staircase, which is really located in the heart of the home, the center of the home. And this was one of those things that made me kind of just go, oh, when I saw the house. I love that it has a landing. In our old house, we had the steepest staircase, and it was terrifying, and our 2-year-old fell down backwards. So I was like, I want a staircase with a landing so they don't die if they fall down the stairs. But what really caught my eye was this banister, which is wood, and it's an original from 1925. And I just love the detail of it. I think if someone were to make it today, they would never put all this time and effort into it, which is why I love old stuff, because things were allowed to take time. Like nowadays, everything just has to go so fast, and it has to be like content worthy for Instagram and whatever. It's just, there's never time to actually just be creative and let it take time, because that's not efficient, or you don't make enough money or whatever. So I love old things. And so this was, you know, love at first sight. It's a beautiful piece of art, really. Let's go upstairs. So this is the master bedroom, and the same kind of, you know, aesthetics apply here as the rest of the house. It's just lots of layers, fabric, cozy, comfortable. That's probably my main, you know, word for the house, cozy and comfortable. So we have the bedspread from Once Milano, which we had downstairs in the grotto, but this is this kind of rusty red, which I love. The cushion here is from Studio Dugan, British interior designer. She has a shop called Trove in Notting Hill, which is amazing. So I carried this back from London. It weighs, it's just really dense. And my husband thought I was nuts. But I squeezed that into my suitcase, which I'm really glad about. And we have the shades here are in our Annalisa fabric, the Swedish ceramist I talked about earlier. So this fabric is inspired by her designs. We have these antique French nightstands with a bunch of books and magazines and, you know, jewelry and stuff. And I keep these notes from my kids for Mother's Day and stuff like that. I like kind of stacking them here. A picture of my very handsome husband. And he has the same on his side, kind of little notes from the kids. And then with the curtains, the fabric of the curtains is our own. It's called Marianne. It's one of our best-selling ones, actually. It's inspired by a Swedish rug weaver called Marianne Richter. She worked for Märta Moos Fjätterström, which is probably Sweden's most famous rug maker. So this is like, they're really heavy, and they have this like kind of, they're French pleats here, and I remember the seamstress, her fingers were bleeding when she was making these curtains, so she wasn't very happy with me because it's a really thick kind of upholstery fabric, but it also gives this really luxurious feeling to the curtains. The striped wallpaper is from Helene Blanche, a Danish designer. I love her wallpaper. They're a bit more minimalistic than my designs, and I think they work very nicely with my fabrics, and so that was a really nice, addition. And then we have this chest of drawers, which I love, which we had lacquered this kind of, oh, well, it's the same green, now that I think of it, as the legs downstairs in the ceramic collection. So I have like clothes and workout clothes and stuff like that in this, and just like pieces of jewelry, perfumes, another Italian ceramic lamp, our lampshade, and I adore these bamboo mirrors, which we have in a few different spots in the house, Franco Albini, which I always find on Etsy too. And I have this little thing, which I love. It's very precious. It's this little box, which my grandmother Barbro gave me. And we have, I don't know what the name is, the English name for this. It's called videung in Swedish. And she kept these. I had two, but I lost one. She kept these because she thought they reminded her of her husband, my late grandfather's earlobes. Like soft and hairy. So this is the actual one that she gave me probably 20 years ago. So I've managed to keep that throughout my moves around the world. So I'm happy with that one. So this is one of my son's rooms, and this whole kind of area that we're in is also, we're on top of the hallway. So this is part of the extension. So this is also like 2 flights of, it's like a bit lower than the rest of the house. And this was a big room before, and we divided it into 2. So my boys' rooms are kind of mirrored. So they both have 2 windows, a bed, and then this wall with wardrobes and storage. And in this room we have used a lot of my own fabrics. So the wallpaper is our wallpaper. It's called Stig. It's also inspired by a Swedish designer who was a ceramist called Stig Lindberg. And Pelle has the same in his room, but it's the blue version. So, and when it comes to wallpaper, I adore wallpaper. It's really like putting clothes on a room. It's just adds something. You dress the room and it just instantly becomes more cozy. So we have wallpaper in all the bedrooms, and the staircase, the loo downstairs. But I would probably refrain from using wallpaper in a huge, bigger room. But when it comes to kind of confined areas and smaller rooms, definitely go for wallpaper. It's so nice. And then the fabric is ours too. It's called the Met, and it's inspired by a 1,000-year-old kind of vase that I saw at the Met in New York. This really kind of modern zigzag pattern, which I thought was so cool that they painted all these years ago. And the chest of drawers, everything is like secondhand or vintage, apart from beds and sheets. And once again, we have another Franco Albini mirror. This area was important for my son. It used to be like a cupboard, but he wanted a space to have his perfumes and, started looking in the mirror. It's like 13 years old, so I thought it would be nice for him to have like a space where he could like keep his stuff. And we have 2 more of those paintings I talked about downstairs that my great-grandfather made or drew. They are from a summer house in southern Sweden, which is like the royal residence, because he worked for, like I said, our late king. So their summer residence was close to Sofiero Slott, which is a castle down south in Sweden. So he was, we have all of those little drawings that he made around the house, which are very special to me. We have vintage chair, Excelius, upholstered in my fabric. This fabric is Kinondo. It's inspired by Kenya and a resort that our friends have called Kinondo Kwetu, which is, honestly one of the best spots in the world. So I designed that fabric when we were there on vacation. So we have this mid-century desk, photos. I love pinboards. I love putting fabrics and little notes and, photos and stuff up on there. So the kids all have one each in their bedrooms. I like to put art on the floor too, like, stacked, and maybe you switch it out from time to time. Just some photos. This is Malte's first love letter. You might hate me for showcasing this, but I framed it because I thought it was the cutest thing ever. I think maybe he was like 4, 5. He got a love letter from a girl at kindergarten. But, the same thing here. It's just color. I think painting trim, painting windows, closets, radiator covers, it just instantly lifts a room, as opposed to if these were white. I always say, like, if you hesitate, just go for the bolder option. You'll never regret it. You will regret, being a chicken when it comes to interior design. And if you regret it, it's just paint. You can always repaint it. Home to me means everything. I'm very much a homebody. I think also in Sweden, where it is dark half of the year, it's extremely important for us to kind of make the home a secluded, cozy, warm place to spend your time. Home is where my kids grow up. This is their childhood. That makes me kind of emotional just talking about it, but this is their childhood home. This is where we form the memories with them. This is where we have our, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday dinner after soccer practice or gymnastics. And this is where we have popcorn in front of the TV on Friday nights, and where we read books, and this is where we fight. This is where we argue who's going to walk the dog when it's pouring down. This is my most happy place in the world. This is where life happens, and it's happening right now, and I just want my kids to remember this place as their safe space.
Hi Homeworthy, I am Nasozi Kakembo. Welcome to my home in Maryland. Come on in, I cannot wait to show you around today.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Nasozi Kakembo. I am an author and creative director of XN Studio, a home decor brand that partners with artisans throughout Africa to create ethically sourced and meaningful home decor goods. We are at my home in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. I actually grew up around the corner from this rental home, and I never anticipated or planned on being back in this area. But as life would have it, my son got into a really great high school program close by, so we packed our home, packed our bags, and moved about 10 minutes away from his high school. And so because I knew at the time that this was going to be like a 2 to 3, maybe 4-year home, depending on what we decided to do once he got his driver's license, around the age of 16, which is knocking on our doorstep now. I wanted a home that felt good because home is my profession and my vocation, but I didn't know really how to invest in a temporary space, making it feel my own without spending too much money. So that was the welcome challenge that I had when finding this home. And really, I feel like I can convert almost any space aesthetically into something that works for me and my family. But having a layout that works for us is something that I really prioritize and value, even over the aesthetics of a home. You can always change the aesthetics, but you can't always change the layout. So especially in the suburbs, a lot of homes are cookie cutter, a lot of homes are replicas of one another in terms of the floor plan. But this one I found had a really unique floor plan It's an end unit townhome. There are some really lovely ceilings. We have lovely skylights. There are a few different level changes, and I found all of that really exciting and accommodating to the way that we live our lives in a home and the way that I wanted to decorate the home. So when I came in, it was like totally a blank slate, and I love that also. And I knew kind of right away what some of the primary changes that I would make to the home were, namely door levers, light fixtures, and then layering on from there in my own DIY and renter-friendly aesthetic. There are also a lot of heirlooms and hand-me-downs from my family and my mother and different aunts. Most of my artwork is made from family. I have really a set of prolific aunts in my life, artistically prolific aunts and family members in my life. So it's a mixture of art that they've produced, art that I've been inspired to create, as well as hand-me-down. Some of these textiles are vintage. They go back 50, 60 years and more. And then the newer textiles that I've created. So welcome to my living room. This is right off of the foyer and also one of the first places that you see when you walk into my home. So I wanted to make it a very welcoming and warm space off the bat. This is how we're living. This is what you're walking into. So I've somewhat replicated this vignette from my previous home. That's also one of my renter hacks. You don't have to start completely from scratch. You can really somewhat copy and paste different aspects or vignettes of your previous home into the space that you're moving into if you have a similar palette or space that you can make that transition onto. So in this case, this is a console that I got from Article during the pandemic. We did some partnership work together. And the reason that I love it beyond what it looks like and fits my aesthetic is that it allows me to store all kinds of stuff in here. So I have candles in here. I think I have just miscellaneous artwork. I'm often switching out and updating artwork throughout my home. There are board games in another one. So you can really just tuck away all of your kind of everyday or seasonal things in a space and set it and forget it, but then have it look good. So this is large. It accommodates all of our little knickknacks. I think we store batteries and light bulbs in another. So it really works well for that purpose. And then I accented it with this Sinufu stool. And this is made in Ivory Coast by Abu, who is in my book. He's a wood sculptor in Ivory Coast. And I got a few different pieces from him during the course of our interview phase for the book research. This is a piece of Kuba cloth. Kuba cloth is made in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. And I actually got this piece in Marrakesh during my book research in June of 2022. Although I do not know who the artisan is, but I did buy it from an artisan vendor in the market. And again, Kuba cloth is featured in my book. These are pieces that I've also wanted to explore more and learn more about. So in my book, I do have an entire section dedicated to the production of Kuba cloth and profiling experts who produce this in DRC. And then you have my book. I keep referencing my book, The African Decor Edit. And I wanted to be able to honor it in a special way beyond putting it kind of on just a prop, something that could prop it up, or laying it around on a book table, on a coffee table, which is still adequate. But I splurged and bought this beautiful book stand by Virginia Sin. And it allows me to prop the book up. I can open it to a page or various pages. And the photography in the book is also its very own special moment. So when I open it up, I also feel like I'm displaying photography in my home. So that is the dedicated space for my book, The African Decor Edit. And then if we come up over here, again, another piece that I got on the road during my book research. This is a large blanket. If I open it up, it's massive, so I'll keep it folded for now. And this is from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in the textile designated area of the capital called Shiromeda. And that is also where I conducted my book research for a specific section on Ethiopian textiles. And this pillow is one of my newer experiments in items. This is indigo from Mali. And this is baule from Ivory Coast, from Cote d'Ivoire. And again, the artisans who create this textile are featured in my book as well. So we get to understand how they produce it, where the cotton comes from, the weaving technique, etc. And so this is a combination of both of those styles. And last but not least, on this corner of the living room, we have a feathered juju hat. What's really exciting about these is that they are actually hats. So they're worn like this. They come from Cameroon, from Western Cameroon, and they're worn with an entire beautiful ensemble during special ceremonies there. And if we swing over to what I like to call my library, but it's just a wall of books, many of which, I've been collecting over years from, high school. Many of them are from college, some are from grad school work. But my most recent and I think most cherished possessions are books that were written by friends and other designers and cookbook authors who I've gotten to know just over the past, 5 to 10 years, and especially during the period of me studying, how books are made and really dissecting and wanting to know more about how this all comes together. So that's essentially what I have showcased here. This is also a calabash from, I believe this is from Ghana. I took this from my brother, Lamine, many years ago. It's actually from Ghana or Brazil. I know those are very different places you would think, but there is a significant symbiosis between the two, given the transatlantic slave trade, and he has spent significant periods of time in both places. This was actually a pulley that is used during weaving, and this originates in Liberia. I bought this in Ghana at the same time I bought the Dogon Mali window shutter. And what I love so much about this piece and what the vendor told me at the time is that in those days, these faces were carved in a way that reflected and resembled the physical features and the facial features of certain tribes from throughout West Africa and pre-colonial West Africa in particular. So these were utilized as passports. You would carry this with you if you were going into another region or going into another kingdom, and you would show them this and they would know where you came from. This would validate and confirm what your origin is, and then you would be allowed entry into that region. And I also love that it's Liberian because my eldest brother, Craig, is half Liberian. So this is also, pays homage to that side of my family as well. So this is one of the pieces that I mentioned is produced by one of my aunts. This is made by my aunt Renee C. Neblett. She is based in Ghana, in Kokrobite, and she's also featured extensively throughout my book. She has a beautiful home there, as well as an art institute called the Kokrobite Institute. But she produced this piece of art called Everybody is Talking. I actually don't know the year, but I'm assuming it was the 70s or the 80s when she was really focused on this artistic style. And so this is a piece that she gave to my mother and my mother gave to me. It's also beautifully matted and framed, and it belongs to me now. This is my somewhat new to me coffee table. It was a Facebook Marketplace find. And I got it a few months before my book came out. I figured I have a coffee table book coming out. I should probably get a coffee table. I originally got rid of our coffee table when my son was learning how to walk, which was almost 15 years ago, and just hadn't gotten around to getting another one. So I really love this. It kind of goes with the vintage, modern aesthetic of my home. And I love that it's clear so it doesn't obstruct visual space, and you can still see my prized Moroccan rug beneath it. This is the rug that I got in Morocco in 2022. And so on the table we have, again, various books from friends. This is by my friend Michael July. We were friends in Brooklyn. I think he's in Atlanta now. This feels, looking back now, kind of like a yearbook of Brooklyn. I have so many friends who are featured in the book. That was from the mid 2005 or so region, and it really captures a moment in time from when I was living in Brooklyn. And this is a classic, a true classic that my mother passed down to my son and I. We both have dreads, and it just shows the beauty and diversity of having dreadlocks. And this is also from my mother. This is an Endop stool, a miniature stool from Nigeria. And if you notice, it's a little bit wobbly. And I always tell customers and clients who are asking and inquiring about, authenticity of different African-made products and objects. And there's always going to be a variation in an artisan and in a handmade object. And that's really what brings it to life and distinguishes it from something that's mass-produced or machine-made. And so, it's not even, and that's what I love about it. And if it's really that serious, you can prop something up underneath, which I have had to do with another stool that I utilize in a more utilitarian purpose, but visually, I love that it's a bit quirky. So in terms of the visual aesthetic, I kind of mix it up depending on the room. This is a larger home, and I didn't feel wed to or committed to needing the home to be completely visually homogeneous or the same. So when you walk into my living room, it's a little bit more neutral. That's by virtue of my sofa. I love leather. I love natural materials. I got a really great rug, a few really great rugs when I was in Morocco on my book research in 2022. And I waited a very long time for my son to get old enough for us to be able to have a light colored rug. So I got like the most ivory rug I could find in the market in Marrakesh. So that is the centerpiece of our living room, and the neutral tones unfold from there. And I do accent that with bright artwork. That's really one of my design staples when I'm working in a neutral space or when I'm in a neutral mood. I still incorporate moments and bursts of color through artwork and home decor accents, so namely pillows and other textiles. This is my entry. We are a few steps up from the front door, and one of the first things that greets you when you come into my home is a very strategically placed wood-carved chest that my mother gave me, that she obtained close to 30 years ago or so when she was managing the African Art Gallery in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. It's sculpted by a famous woodcarver called Lamidi Fakei, and he is a renowned sculptor from Nigeria, and specifically from the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. And these are very traditional Yoruba carvings. You can see some of the motifs here that actually carry out throughout various other textiles and African art and objects. It's one of the most popular designs that you'll find, and the specific features and features on the objects and the subjects within the chest are very specific to this style of Yoruban art carving and wood carving. So this is a piece from my mother, and it holds a lot of familial value. For that reason, it's been in the family for quite some time. And then to my left here, I have a carving from Mali, from the Dogon region of Mali. And this was not a hand-me-down. This was a piece that I got when I was doing my book travels and research in Ghana in March of 2023. And this is from an artisan market in Ghana. And these are actually, they come in different sizes. This is one of the smaller sizes that I could fit in my suitcase. And this was a door shutter, and they're used on homes and granaries in the Dogon region of Mali. And so this is also a hand-carved object, and it showcases people from that area doing, different daily activities. There's also local animal life that you see here. There's an alligator, and This is the very cool shutter lever. So there are several different elements on that I really wanted to be able to bring back. The doors are probably, you know, larger than our standard door, super beautiful, very heavy, and unfortunately there's no way that I could bring them back here. So this is a memento and a nod to that wood carving tradition from Mali, West Africa as well. So here just below the doggone shutter, we have a collection, kind of a motley collection of different objects and art that I picked up along the way. This is a vintage kind of antique vase from a second-hand shop, and I'd love to have a moment of a fresh flower here. This flower, actually both of these, eucalyptus and this one, I don't know the name. I got them last week in Los Angeles. I was there for my book tour and I did a flower run in central LA, and I've had this habit of trying to preserve my book tour flowers for as long as possible. Some of them I've been able to dry and they're also around the home, but these are still relatively fresh. I was in Los Angeles a week ago, so they're still going strong, and I want to be able to display them for as long as possible, and they will always remind me of my book tour. This is a watercolor / drawing that my cousin actually got custom made for me. It's from a photograph taken the night of my New York launch, which was on October 1st. And that was in Soho, Manhattan. And this was right after the event concluded. And we went out to get some fun shots in the street. And it was a whirly dress, kind of a flapper style dress made by Andrea Iyama. And I partnered with Industry Africa for my clothing and jewelry for my New York launch. And so this also captures that moment from my book tour. This is a postcard from one of my favorite restaurants in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg. It's called Colette. And this is another postcard that I got when I was in Paris a few summers ago. And I don't really know the story. I'd never seen this painting before, this drawing before, but I went into the gift shop and there were very few objects and souvenirs that reflected Black people and Black art in the gift shop, and even more largely throughout the Louvre. And yeah, so I bought this. I pretty much bought everything that I could find that had a Black person on it, because I wanted to, represent and show that these objects are in demand. This art is in demand, and I found the artwork beautiful. So I wanted to place it in a very prominent place in my home. And then this is a soapstone sculpture from Uganda, and these are available in my web shop, XN Studio, and I call it Tulinawe, and Tulinawe is the Luganda word for together. And so it's a continuous sculpted piece, and to me that represents togetherness. So I dubbed it Tulinawe in honor of what it looks like aesthetically, and also to be able to incorporate some of the Luganda language into my products. The powder room, there are a few updates that I made here. First and foremost, the door lever. All of the door levers in my home initially were doorknobs, like the brassy kind of doorknobs that come pretty standard in 1990s townhomes. And so the updates that I made in here were, I had remnants of this wallpaper that I've had for probably close to 8 years. And these were leftovers after I installed wallpaper in the foyer of my previous home. And obviously, the seams don't match, but I think that adds to the quirky nature of it. You don't always, if you have remnants, I would much rather do this and utilize something that has a special meaning to me, that I still like visually. And it was a small space and a fun space. So I figured, there could be worse things than seams that don't match. So I think that's actually a bit of decor advice from me to you. Don't be afraid to install mismatched seams wallpaper. And beyond that, I've also utilized this indigo textile from Mali as a hand towel. And it's super absorbent. I actually have these at various places throughout my home. I use them as towels when I travel because they roll up very small, and they are super absorbent. So they're easy to travel with. I take them with me when I travel. I use them in my home as hand towels. I take them to the beach. You'll probably always find me with one in some capacity. And then the other small update that I made in here is switching out the faucet fixture. That was a super easy update as well. I did that on my own DIY. And that's the powder room. The best compliment that somebody could give me about my home, and that I often get about my home, is that it feels very warm in here. The other day, there was somebody from a utility company, and he came in and he was like, "Whoa, this feels really warm. Like, are you a designer?" You must. And I was like, "Yeah, I am. I am a designer." But to hear that from complete strangers, and I know that this is actually not his aesthetic, but there was still something about it that felt warm and familiar to him. And I think that's what textiles can do. That's what art can do. That's what photos of family can do. So regardless of your background or where you come from or what your actual aesthetic preference is, there are common elements that signal this is a home. Somebody has taken time to put this together to curate a space that is welcoming. So that's really the best compliment I could receive and do receive when I have friends and family and utility guys over my home. I don't know so much that I have a design mantra, but the mantra and the tagline behind Accent Studio is lifestyle without borders. And so that's the way I think about my design. That's really what my design indicates and signals to me, because I've noticed different aesthetics, different patterns that are present and are popular and have existed in various parts of the culture, either independently or somewhat intertwined for centuries. And so design doesn't respect borders. Design doesn't adhere to borders. Design does not know borders. And I think that there's something inherently beautiful about that dialogue that is supra, a geopolitical construct. And that is also why I design, and that's also what inspires me to create and to work with people across borders. So welcome to my dining room transitional area. On the left here, we have a painting that I created. So this piece was inspired by a painting that I saw in the background of Lawrence's apartment in Insecure. And it was a slightly smaller painting. It was more vertically oriented, but I looked at it, I loved it. I remember taking, pictures of the painting on the television, and then running out to get all of the materials to get the canvas. And I believe I already had the paint. And this was the piece that I produced from it, and I'm constantly getting inquiries when people see it on social media or something, but I don't actually fashion myself as a painter. So I have not made them available beyond my own private collection at home, but I love that it reminds me of that TV show, Insecure, and how you can also find inspiration and creative inspiration around you all the time, including on television. So swinging around to one of the nooks in my dining room, this is an area where I've actually sat here, similar to the mudcloth butterfly chair in my living room. This is an indigo butterfly chair, and it's a really comfortable place at times when I've had really, hectic work days. I often work at my dining room table, so sitting here kind of lets me release a little bit. I might have a small table on the side, and I'm just writing some emails from here, and it really creates a nice transition space from what my dining room has become, which is my office. Although I have an office, but there's something about working at the dining table. These are also a collection of pieces. Again, another Bolga fan. This one I got at an international African Arts Festival in Brooklyn, probably a decade or so ago. I don't remember exactly. These are photographs that I took of, this is the Gaddafi Mosque in Kampala, which is just outside of my aunt's apartment in Kampala. in Old Kampala, and this is some of the beautiful breeze block in her apartment building that I found really gorgeous. And I actually took those photos in, I believe, 2007 when I was in Uganda doing thesis research for my graduate thesis. This is a picture that a painting that my son made when he was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and it was selected to be on display in the mall. And we're all very proud of it. It was made from etched in styrofoam and rolling on different paint colors. So there's a purple one too somewhere as well. This is a hat, I believe also from Mali, that I somewhat borrowed 16 years ago from a family member who was moving from Brooklyn to Oakland. And my son was a toddler then, and they put the hat on his head and sent me a picture. I was at work and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to keep that. That is super cute on him. And so I've integrated it into my decor as well. And so as you can see here, I love mixing objects with paintings and art and pictures on a gallery wall. Gallery walls don't just have to be a uniform picture, 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 painting, painting, painting. You can really mix it up by adding different objects in addition to switching up the orientation. This gallery wall starts low, or it stretches more vertically than it does horizontally. And this was the first time that I did this, and that's really just what the space dictated to me. I didn't know really what to do with the space at first. Was I going to put something big here? But this was the first piece that I put up and just built out from there based on things that I was finding. So it has developed very organically. And here we have an Ethiopian Coptic cross that was gifted to me by a family member who visited in 2011 or so. So this has also been in the family for some time. We have another wood carved piece from the same Yoruba artist who carved the chest in the front. And this serves, as you can see here, as an elevated plant stand. I really revere my plants. I know that, there are maybe other, better, more prestigious ways of showcasing this artisan and this sculptor's work, but my plants mean everything to me, so this is not a downgrade. I also have photographs and works here by friends and also images, pictures that I took myself over the years. This was a beautiful block in Brooklyn where I used to live, and I snapped this picture in 2013. I just loved the juxtaposition of the different bright colored doors and then the bicycle outside. It all felt very Brooklyn to me. So I wanted to frame that to remember that portion of my life spent in Brooklyn. This is a picture from Cameroon. Actually snapped this in the car, driving by really quickly, and saw this beautiful gaggle of school children headed home from school one day, and just really loved that scene and wanted to also keep that and incorporate that once I got back home. So this is my dining room table, AKA my desk. I work here a lot, and it was one of the first spaces that I had mocked up in Photoshop before moving in. I knew that this was exactly the space that this table was going to go. I knew that I wanted to change out the light fixture immediately, and I knew that I wanted to add a ceiling medallion. So those were some of the first things that I did when I moved into the home and really created the dining room table as a focal point, really just, extending from this update in DIY as well. And this is a mudcloth table runner. Here, again, mudcloth is from Mali, West Africa. And I pointed the table with different upholstery as well. So this is also a mudcloth piece. This is a piece from my mother. It was part of a much larger piece and is actually still a lot more at her home, but I snagged a few pieces to upholster these Cheska chairs. And this is, again, a Kuba cloth. This is another form, a low-cut pile Kuba cloth from the same style that I have hanging above my media console in the living room. And this is just a different variety of that. So I use that to accent my these other chairs in the dining room. So one of the best things about African textiles, again, is that they go with so many different styles and patterns. And one great example is the fact that I then, on my kitchen island, have this very frilly lace kind of cafe curtain, DIY cafe curtain, that I was inspired to create after, again, my visit to Paris. And what I love so much about Parisian decor is that it does blend and mix between these two traditional styles. This is traditional Parisian and this is traditional Congolese, but again, they work together because they're steeped in some larger and more traditional meaning. And so what inspired me also from a utilitarian standpoint to put some visual block here is coming down the stairs and seeing this, without any obstruction. You just see all of my junk under the kitchen island. And so I was trying to figure out, like, how can I hide this in an aesthetically pleasing way? And I was at IKEA and stumbled upon these really cool, this is actually a pot rail, and the size ended up perfect. So this is an IKEA island. I got it off of Facebook Marketplace, and then I went to IKEA and bought these pot rails, and I already had this lace curtain that I utilized in one of my closets in my previous home, and I cut it in half and had enough to use around the entire island. So it creates this really fun kind of Parisian cafe moment in my otherwise very modern African home aesthetic. And again, alluding to the different ways that I spruced up the home. When I installed this peel and stick brick wallpaper, I remember as soon as it was done and I stepped back, I felt so good because it really grounded the space, which prior to installing it felt very kind of voluminous to me and felt overwhelming. And I didn't install this until I think July or August. So I'd already been in the home for some time. But again, I wanted to take my time to really figure out what worked for me here. And I did the whole Photoshop thing, and it looked good on Photoshop, but you don't always know what it will look like in person. So I was really pleased with how this turned out. And every now and again, like, somebody can tell, but they're like, it's fine. It's fine that it's not real. Those are mostly like my Brooklyn friends who have real brick in their homes. But for those of us who don't have that, we're like none the wiser, and it's convincing. So over here we have a music station, which can somewhat be misleading because none of us in the home are actually musicians. My son is a great musician, but he didn't really like stick toward the piano. He's also really great at the drums. But this was a keyboard that my father passed down to my son. And whenever I host, actually, when I'm hosting gatherings and my family is here, my dad, who's an amazing pianist, he assumes his position and provides entertainment and music for the evening. So I keep this here for him. And then we also have a piano bench, which I created, which I designed. It's a mixture, again, between this modern aesthetic and mud cloth, and I use more industrial feel, these legs for the bench as well. So it's a combination of modern and traditional, and then bringing them together for a utilitarian purpose at our music station. And above said music station, another piece by my aunt Renee Neblett. This one is called A Tear for Biko, and she produced this in 1984. And Stephen Biko was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa who was killed and sacrificed his life for the movement and the anti-apartheid movement and liberation in the 80s. So this is also a very important piece, both in terms of its significance and also visually. The kitchen is very stark to me. And it was a newly renovated kitchen when I moved in. If I were renovating it, I would do something a bit different. But it's beautifully done, it's well done, but it's not so much visually to my liking. And I wanted, again, to make it warmer, to ground the aesthetic, ground the visual experience in the kitchen. So I did that by adding an apron and having that on display rather than tucking it away. I have this vintage Persian rug that my mother gave me, And also utilizing, I removed one of the cabinet doors here and created an open shelving concept, an open shelving space, which also brought down some of the visual monotony of having just this blank wall of white cabinets and gray subway tiles. So in it, I've added special pieces. These are coffee mugs from my friend Zelika's wedding many years ago. These are traditional Buna coffee cups, and then some other important stemware and meaningful stemware and glassware. One of my best friends' cookbooks by Hawa Hassan in Bibi's Kitchen. She's a James Beard Award winner. And then also another variety of cookbooks by friends as well. My friend Keanu, and then Alexandra Smalls and Nina Duro. These are both new books, cookbooks that came out. Add them to your guest list or your gifting list for this holiday season and thank me later. So my career path, it was/is a bit meandering. I've always been surrounded by eclectic, creative women and men, but in particular the women in my life, starting with my mother and the group of aunties that raised me and raised me and my brothers together in Washington, D.C. area, and also a little bit in Europe. My parents met in Germany, and so they relocated to the Washington, D.C. area because my father got into Howard University Medical School, and so they left Germany and set up a new life here. And my parents are both entrepreneurial. Like I said, my father studied medicine, but he went on to establish his own medical clinic, family practice. And he started that from the ground up and ran that himself for the greater part of my life. And my mother worked in promoting African art, artists, and fashion here in the Washington, D.C. area, plugging primarily into the ambassador groups that live here and the women and the wives of ambassadors and female ambassadors, and using that as a channel to gain further exposure for African artists who were coming here for the first time or trying to really get a foothold in the African market. And so, you know, me as a little kid going to fashion shows with my mother, going to expos and expositions with my mother in Washington, D.C. at the convention center, that was how I grew up. If there was, you know, a day where school was closed for whatever reason, I would be at the African Art Gallery in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. that she managed, which is also where and how I came across and now have a lot of the art in my home. There are pieces that she collected during that time frame, which now have been passed on to me. And that was really kind of what I grew up around and established as the baseline of what's normal. Women and my family members creating their own way where there wasn't a way, or where there was not exactly an idea or a concept or an opportunity that fit what their ambitions. They created that way. They created that path and blazed a trail for the likes of me. And so fast forward many, many years, I got into architecture. I pursued architecture and art history in school, pivoted a little bit to human rights and social justice through my urban planning studies in graduate school at Columbia, and then worked in human rights for many years, human rights and social justice philanthropy for many years after that in New York City, all the while really missing my creative outlet. So once I got an opportunity to decide what I wanted to do for myself, I pursued human rights, and I actually realized a few years into that career that there is and can be a bridge between the arts, culture, and social justice and human rights. So XN Studio is a home decor brand, but it is also an advocacy tool and an incubator for economic development, women's empowerment, and cultural and historic preservation of African culture and art and histories throughout the continent of Africa. So the most recent and ambitious project that I've taken on in that, 13-year time span, I founded XN Studio in 2011. And a few weeks ago, last month, I published my first book that really encapsulates the essence of what Accent Studio has pursued in terms of storytelling and profiling the lives of artisans throughout Africa through the lens of the work that they produce, through the lens of their textiles, through the lens of their wooden sculptures, etc. And in that project, I interview 16 artisans throughout 9 countries in Africa, and then showcase 10 homes ranging from Los Angeles to Berlin to Accra that demonstrate in elevated and meaningful ways and creative ways of incorporating African decor into various lifestyles and homes. So come with me now upstairs. I will take you to my bedroom. So welcome to my primary bedroom, my primary suite, as I like to call it. This is where a lot more layering action happens with textiles and baskets, and a new fun light fixture that is a new addition to my collection for Accent Studio, and pretty much inspired by, again, my book research. I worked a lot and researched a lot of objects created and made by raffia, and I just went crazy with it when I got home and started looking around to see, well, what can I design with this myself? I was really inspired by the artisan stories and creations while I was on the road in a way that I hadn't necessarily been when I was a little bit more removed from the production. So this is one of my favorite things ever, especially given my very high ceiling. My cathedral ceiling here, had really been trying to figure out how to, again, ground the space. I like cozy small spaces, and so this light fixture really achieves that, helps me achieve, again, a warmer space, a more grounded space, and it makes the space feel less humongous to me. This is another Ashoke textile, and this was given to me by my best friend, whose mother-in-law gave it to her directly from Nigeria. Her mother-in-law is Yoruba, and that, again, those are the people who specialize in this type of textile. So her mother-in-law knows that I love African textiles, and so she gave this to my best friend to then give to me. And this is folded in half. It's also a very large textile, so it serves as a really lovely and stylish coverlet as well. And here I've added a mixture of mud cloth. Well, this is mud cloth, again, with my favorite raffia. This is an indigo pillow that I've had for, again, 10 or 15 years. And this is a batik pillow, and I also share and go into depth on this process in the book as well, with a batik artisan named Angie in Ghana. And she's actually the one who taught me how to batik during an artist residency there in 2018. These are all baskets from Zambia. These are Tonga baskets, and I got these baskets, again, during my book research and travels, and there is a Tonga basket artisan in the book as well. And this really beautiful brass lamp is from my mother. I believe she got it at the Georgetown Flea. So this is probably 30 years old, probably at least 30 years old. So in this nook here, we have, again, another juju hat from Cameroon, and also a new wallpaper that I've added to the collection called the Sheena wallpaper. And it is inspired by a Kuba cloth design. And so these are traditional motifs and designs that derive from this specific textile tradition. And I was able to adapt that into a wallpaper format. And again, this wall took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with aesthetically. I tried various different wallpapers in Photoshop. And ultimately, when I designed this for the new collection and rendered it in Photoshop, it transformed the space instantly and took my breath away. So I'm super happy with how it turned out. I'm glad that I waited. And yeah, this is inspired by Kuba cloth as well. And then down here, these are some more textiles from my mother. This is a mud cloth as well. And this is a newer design, a newer style. This is not from my mother, but this was one that she was gifted and she ultimately gifted me. And so I use it just to spruce up this corner as well. And then a couple points over here as well. This is a Senegalese basket where I'm able to store blankets and pillows when they're in or out of season. And I got this at the Brooklyn Flea many years ago. And then over here, again, utilizing beautiful wood sculpted African furniture and objects as plant stands. And so this is a Bamileke stool from Cameroon. And again, I was able to interview the artisan who makes that. His name is Honoré, and he's in Western Cameroon. And funny story, I mean, you look at the size here, and somehow I was able to fit it in my suitcase. Coming back, in addition to like 12 shields, I don't know how we managed to do that, but by the time me and 5 grown adults were sitting and maneuvering with my luggage, we were all sweating, but we got the stool to fit into my luggage. So that's the funny story behind that. So this is one of 3 rugs that I brought back from Morocco. Unlike the Bamileke stool, which I crammed into my luggage, I had the sense to ship these back from Morocco. So I worked with the vendor and we bundled them up and shipped them via DHL. And it gave me something to look forward to coming home from. I definitely didn't want to leave my travels. I had a spectacular 2.5 months in Africa for the research, but I was excited to come home to my Moroccan rugs, and this was one of them. And it works perfectly in my bedroom. I tried it out in the living room for a while, but again, I really wanted to have that ivory moment in the living room. So I saved this piece for my bedroom. So my primary bathroom has been one of the biggest challenges and most rewarding spaces in the home so far. It was a completely blank white slate when I moved in, and again, in wanting to ground the various spaces in the home, I really had to sit and brainstorm on this space for a while. There's a massive skylight which floods the bathroom with light in addition to the cathedral ceiling. So it's a very large space. So trying to figure out what I could do here that wasn't a full renovation and that was renter friendly was really a challenge. And the first thing that I did, obviously, was layer the space with some of my textiles and baskets. So these are 2 Ugandan baskets that are also in my collection and made by artisans in the book, made by raffia. You know, I love raffia. And so this was a moment also in a vignette that I borrowed from my previous home. And I spoke to the wood-like wallpaper, and this is it. This is not real wood. I know it's hard to believe, but again, experimented with several different wallpapers on this wall through Photoshop, thankfully, and it took me a while to actually realize or to think about adding the wallpaper in a wood-like design here on this wall. But as soon as I did it, I was like, this is the wallpaper, this is the one. So this is, again, going all the way up. It makes it feel, it grounds and warms up the space in a way that I wasn't able to achieve by just leaving it blank. And it's also very much in keeping with my minimalist aesthetic. And then if we zoom down to the floors quickly, this is really what ultimately transformed after all was said and done. I still needed to, and felt like I needed to do something with the floor. And this was the one piece that actually is not so renter friendly because these are peel and stick, but they are permanent. They're not gonna come up without leaving the adhesive. So I rendered the space very beautifully in Photoshop and emailed my landlord, and I was like, pretty please, can I do this? And he already knows that I'm a designer. So I think he was just like waiting for the day to come. And he loved the idea, he loved the concept, and he gave me the green light. So as soon as I did this, again, very much inspired by my Parisian mixture and hodgepodge of design and travels, this really made the space pop, and it really elevated the space into a sophisticated bathroom and like spa-like experience, if you will. So this was the last thing the last design element that I added to the bathroom, and it really changed it for me, and I love spending time in here now. I do source a lot of my objects, again, from vintage spaces, from flea markets. And this is a piece from one of my textile vendors. His name is Diop, and he sets up at the Chelsea market, I think every Saturday and Sunday. He's still working there. And this piece is, again, about 10 years old. And these are made in Ghana, and they're used as kind of like billboards or advertisements for barbershops and hair salons. And there's a whole, prolific tradition behind these, which are painted, painted on wood. So they're really beautiful, and I was finally able to save my money and get my hands on one some years ago. So I have, very special pieces, and another piece of advice that I have for anybody looking to decorate their home with special pieces that you're purchasing is sometimes you do have to save money for it. Really quality and meaningful work is not always going to come at a cheap price, but when I have my mind set on something and my visual eye set on something, I know that I'm gonna just begin kind of creating a little fund. So that was even the same for my first juju hat, who I also got from Diop in Chelsea Market. And it was only $150, but at that time, that was a lot of money for me. So it probably took me like a year to save up the money, because I was also saving up money to buy a home. But when I purchased the home, I had my little fund for my juju hat, and I let Diop know. And it made it even that much more special for me. So there's, again, a mixture of artwork that I've purchased from others, that I've saved my money for, and artwork that I create as a not artist. This was originally, this black and gold diptych was originally a triptych. There's a piece in the center, and it was above my dining room and my old home, but I've used it at various points. I've used it in gallery walls and flanking different gallery walls. I don't actually remember or know what I did with the centerpiece, but in the meantime, it acts kind of as an interior shutter. It gives like a shutter experience. And this was a piece that I made going into one of my birthdays, where I wanted to create. I was in a very, again, artistically creative space. So that's gold spray paint and black paint, and I freehanded the whole thing. So that was a fun piece. And then this is a combination of the batik, which you saw on my pillow, on one of the pillows on my bed. And then I love cobalt blue, so I add it, or like Frida Kahlo blue. So I add it really into as many elements and design as I can. I also do a fun flower pot or planter with that same color, and adobe. I love the combination of primary bold colors and neutral colors. So this brings those two aesthetics together. So believe it or not, this vanity was also stark creamy white when I moved in. And this started out as leftover wallpaper from my son's bedroom, who wanted an all black room, and his room in our previous home was all black. So I wanted to bring that in for him so that he could also feel like this was his home as well. So this was leftover. I was grappling with what to do with this vanity. It was all white cream, and there were, it was kind of peeling. It wasn't in good condition. So I tried out the peel and stick on here, and it's thin enough as to where I was able to wrap it around the door. So if you think about, wrapping a box for a gift or something, that was my approach to the door and to the vanity. So it took about, maybe half a day or so, and this was one of the first achievements in, again, grounding the space. It draws the eye down, and it makes the space feel cozier and warmer. And so this gives us another uncanny DIY in the primary bathroom. The word home to me means refuge and respite. There's nothing that I love more than coming home after a long trip and just plopping down on my sofa, or having coffee at my kitchen island. I really just love to feel embraced here and to feel like this is the safe space for me and my son that I've worked really hard to create. And that's what home means to me, is refuge and safety. Homeworthy, it's been real. I've had a lot of fun having you over today, but I've got to get to work, so you don't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. See you next time. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.